In the previous life, when assigning educated youth to rural households, I went out of my way to place Qing Liwen in my own home. Later, Qing Liwen was admitted to Huada University, becoming the first golden phoenix to fly out of the mountain valley for miles around. After graduation, he married me according to the engagement arranged in our early years, but on our wedding night, he suddenly pushed me down the stairs. He said, "If it weren't for your scheming back then, how would Shurian have been assigned to Widow Li's house?" She was forced to marry Widow Li's simple-minded son, then tragically miscarried. Her whole life was ruined. She didn't even get a chance to take the college entrance exam. I ended up paralyzed from the fall, abandoned by him in a leaky, broken-down shack. Qing Liwen, on the other hand, quickly remarried the daughter of his superior and rose meteorically in his career after retiring. He even wrote his memoirs, reminiscing about his love with Lin Shurian during those harsh years when I was reduced to begging on the streets. It was Lin Shurian who collected my body after death. In this life, when the educated youth quarters are being allocated, I decide to let Lin Shurian live in my home. In June, at the threshing ground, the sun blazed like a ball of fire beside me. My father puffed on his dry tobacco, the harsh smoke mixing with the clamor from the grounds and rushing straight into my nose. This is not a dream. I have truly returned to the day the educated youth quarters were allocated. I remember that because of several days of heavy rain, the old mud rooms at the educated youth compound couldn't hold up, half a wall collapsed, and even the roof was left with a big hole. The village chief, anxious and rubbing his hands together, finally made the decision to have the educated youth disperse and stay with whichever households had spare rooms. My father, as the village party branch secretary, naturally had to lead by example. He was waiting at the dam square early in the morning to make arrangements. In the center of the dam square stood 10 educated youths, their uneasy gazes fixed on the surrounding villagers. The more quick-witted ones had already quietly approached villagers they knew to secure themselves a good place to stay. Others, shy and rigid in character, simply stood waiting obediently for their assignments. Only Qing Liwen held his chin slightly raised, looking completely confident, yet deliberately furrowing his brow as if something bothered him. His good friend Lu Wei, seeing this, pursed his lips and asked, "So that Su girl is really latching on to you?" Qing Liwen, feigning reluctance but with a hint of pride in his tone, replied, "No helping it. She insists I stay at her house." He then shifted his tone, looked at the girl beside him, and said anxiously, "Shurian, don't worry, no matter which family you go to, I will take care of you." Lin Shurian, who had her hair in braids, held her bag tightly and did not reply. The female supporting character is about to stir up trouble again. If she hadn't made Qing Liwen go to her house, how could the female lead have been assigned to the widow's home? Poor female lead ends up assigned to Widow Li's house, forced to marry that fool. The person earlier who said it's a pit of fire was spot on. I've heard that fool in Widow Li's family hits people too, and look how the female lead suffered later. Just thinking about it hurts. The female lead and male lead truly loved each other, but because of what happened later, they couldn't be together. It really leaves a bitter feeling. Li Dazhu's family, educated youth Lu Wei, Wang Daxing's family, educated youth Hu Shu. One by one, as the team leader called out names, the educated youth on the dam grew fewer and fewer. "Sweetheart, Dad will get it done for you right away." My father finished smoking his coarse tobacco, the ashes pattering to the ground, and prepared to step forward. "Dad, wait." I quickly held him back and handed over the note I had been gripping tightly in my palm. "Dad, write this, no more changes." He took it skeptically, but didn't think much of it. After all, just the night before, I had been crying and throwing a tantrum, insisting that Qing Liwen was good at studying and looked reliable, and pestered him relentlessly to let Qing come live in our home. When the team leader took the note and looked at it, he raised his hand and wrote a line on the blackboard. Su Jiangwo's household, educated youth Lin Shurian, 2, Hua. The villagers nearby immediately turned their heads, their eyes gleaming with undisguised gossip as they stared straight at Su Jiangwo and me. "Hey, why is educated youth Lin going to Su Jiangwo's house? Didn't Su Qing throw a tantrum with her mother just the other day, insisting that educated youth Qing stay with them? Who knows, maybe party secretary Su made the decision, and Su Qing just can't go against her father. Ha ha ha, that's right. Yesterday, someone even saw Su Qing cornering educated youth Qing to talk. Everyone knows she won't settle for anyone but Qing Liwen." The villagers all knew that I had even gotten into several fights with the village chief's daughter, Su Yume, all in an attempt to snatch educated youth Qing to stay at my house. Qing Liwen's head snapped up, as if he couldn't believe his ears. Lin Shurian looked somewhat taken aback. The team leader had no time for such interruptions. He compared the list against the names and said, "There's still one person left, Qing Liwen, who hasn't been assigned." "Oh, right, didn't that Liaxiu just have a vacant west-facing room?" Liaxiu, nearly 50, had lost her husband early and lived at the end of the village with her only son, who was mentally disabled. The villagers usually called her Widow Li. Chatter from all sides filled my ears, but I had no mind to pay attention. In front of me, a barrage of comments was scrolling rapidly. What's going on? Why isn't the female side character written as Qing Liwen? Instead, it's Lin Shiyan. Don't tell me she's up to something. Yesterday she was fighting with female role no. 3, and now she changes her mind today. She's probably just taking her anger out on Lin Shiyan. +1, used to chase after Qing Liwen like a shadow, now suddenly letting go, looks a lot like playing hard to get. Maybe she's trying to get a grip on Lin Shiyan first, then force Qing Liwen to relent later. I'll bet a cup of taro. Milk tea. I don't think so. Besides, given how things are at Widow Li's place, Lin Shiyan would be better off with the Su family than jumping into a fire pit. My dad's face darkened right away too. He was about to scold me, but probably remembered his position as village party secretary and didn't want to lose his temper in front of the villagers. He just glared at me and said, "You girl, never give me an ounce of peace. Wait till we get home, I'll deal with you then." I quickly tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, just this once, I promise I won't be so willful again." Never again in my past life. It was precisely because I pestered him relentlessly, insisting that Qing Liwen come and live at our house. After that, I was dead set on marrying him to make me happy. Dad went out of his way to send food coupons to him through others, ran around begging for favors when Qing Liwen's city resettlement quota got stuck, and even swallowed his pride as village party secretary to put on a smiling face for the commune officials. But in the end, he was literally angered to death by Qing Liwen's behavior. 3. Dad had something to do, so he told me to wait by the roadside for Lin Shiyan to come back together, and also help people with their luggage. He had barely taken 2 steps when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. Qing Liwen rushed over with clenched fists, his face flushed with anger. "Su Qing, weren't you pestering me just a few days ago, insisting that I had to come to your place? Now what kind of game are you playing?" Lu Wei followed behind him, wearing an expression that said, "I'm standing up for my buddy." "Exactly, Su Qing, you change your mind faster than flipping a page, and letting Lin Shiyan stay at your place. Could it be that you think she's soft-tempered and want to deliberately bully her?" Qing Liwen also looked as if it had just dawned on him, and said with great magnanimity, "Su Qing, stop acting like a child. Do you think that by tricking Lin Shiyan into staying at your place, you can boss her around and bully her?" Qing Liwen was said to have attended high school in the county, and if not for a twist of fate, he would have gone straight to university. Lin Shiyan went to the same school as him. When Qing Liwen first came to our village, he wore a faded blue shirt and looked fair, gentle, and refined. He always spoke with his chin slightly lifted, and I couldn't take my eyes off him. From then on, I kept finding excuses to visit the educated youth spot. I always thought he was the most exceptional among the educated youths, but looking back now, that exceptional quality was just the gilding I had added to Qing Liwen. It was my own longing for city life. I immediately cut him off. "Qing Liwen, haven't you always found me annoying? Now I don't want you staying at my place. Isn't that exactly what you wanted?" But I looked toward Lin Shiyan, who was walking over. "I want Lin Shiyan to come to my house. Besides, my dad is the village party branch secretary, and the team has repeatedly ordered us to take care of the educated youth." Have you ever seen a village secretary's daughter openly bully an educated youth? Qing Liwen's face instantly darkened again. Don't you regret it?" I scoffed. Who should be the one regretting this compared to the other educated youths? Qing Liwen's luggage was just one canvas bag. He probably knew I would subsidize him with things. I remember he gave most of his bedding and clothes to Lu Wei. Now, he'd probably have to come back with his tail between his legs to ask for them back. For, "Let's go." Lin Shiyan, not wanting to speak to Qing Liwen any longer, I angrily pulled Lin Shiyan and left. Perhaps because my tone was a bit harsh, Lin Shiyan obediently followed me without a single complaint. Instead, it was me who noticed I had wrinkled her sleeve and sheepishly let go. "Look, I wasn't taking my anger out on you, Lin Shiyan." Before, I had indeed made sarcastic remarks toward Lin Shiyan because of Qing Liwen, but after everything I went through in my past life, I now understand, he's completely unworthy of that. It was all just my one-sided wishful thinking. Moreover, in my previous life, I ended up wandering the streets and freezing to death under a bridge. It was Lin Shiyan, who had returned to work in the city, who managed to recognize me. and she paid for my burial out of her own pocket. Lin Shurian nodded, looking at me thoughtfully. I know, Su Qing. The way home passed by Widow Li's house. That mud hut was indeed shabby, with most of the plaster peeling off the walls and a half-burnt pile of firewood stacked in the corner. Just as we reached the yard gate, we saw a half-grown boy squatting on the threshold, Widow Li's son, Erju. When he saw someone approaching, especially when he noticed both me and Lin Shurian were women, he immediately broke into a silly grin and slurred, new bride. We ignored him. Then Erju suddenly scrambled up from the threshold and shuffled over, almost pressing himself against Lin Shurian. My mom says you're the new bride, be my wife. Lin Shurian's face turned pale. I instinctively pulled Lin Shurian aside. Erju, come back. Widow Li quickly walked out of the house, hurriedly pulled Erju inside, then gave us an awkward, placating smile. The kid's talking nonsense. Don't take it to heart, don't take it to heart. I pulled Lin Shurian along as we walked quickly past the yard gate, but my chest felt tight with anxiety. In my previous life, Lin Shurian ended up being assigned here. She endured 2 years in this drafty earthen house, and later Widow Li somehow tricked her into marrying Erju. After she became pregnant, she tripped over the threshold while working and tragically miscarried. When she finally managed to get into college, Widow Li hid her acceptance letter. Qin Liwen was right. It's all my fault, I have to make it right. 5. I prepared the West Wing last night. My mother had already swept it spotless, even using a bamboo pole to clear the cobwebs from the beams. Knowing Qin Liwen was coming, I also picked some wildflowers by the roadside and placed them in a ceramic bowl. They say this is the way to create a scholarly atmosphere. This was the same room in my previous life. Qin Liwen had barely stepped through the door before his brow furrowed deeply. This is your spare room. Even the woodshed in our county town is brighter than this. Later, he would constantly bring up, back in the county town. My desk was made of rosewood, the malted milk my mother sent me. I couldn't even bring myself to drink it at the educated youth spot. The superiority and discontent seeping through his every word made me feel as if my family was failing him, so I tried my best to give him the finest I had. I would slip him the eggs I'd secretly saved, and find a way to adjust the size of the new cloth shoes my mother had made. I even gave him the bicycle my aunt had sent back. I also urged my father to find him an easier job. But now, Lin Shurian stood at the door and blinked softly. Thank you, Su Qing. This room is spacious and clean. I really like it. Thank you, all of you. This is the second time today she has spoken to me. First, come to think of it, I used to really dislike her. I always thought she was aloof. Back then, I used to curse her in my heart for putting on airs, but really I was secretly feeling inferior. I didn't even finish middle school. I recognized fewer words than she had in her books, and yet she could sit there reading Russian. Now, standing face to face with her, I still feel a bit uneasy. I quickly stiffened my face and deliberately hardened my tone. No need to thank me. If you're staying here, you follow my rules, eat on time, wash your own clothes, and don't read aloud in the yard and disturb the neighbors. After saying that, not daring to look at her reaction, I turned and walked toward the door. 6. Lin Shurian put down her things and, after resting only briefly, went to the kitchen to help my mother with the work. My father, carrying the ration grain the village had allotted for the educated youth, didn't return until evening. As soon as he got home, he asked me, "Girl, what exactly are you thinking? The day before yesterday you were crying and screaming for Qin Liwen to come, and today you've changed your mind." Actually, my mother had asked the same thing after meeting Lin Shurian. I nearly got down on my knees to swear, "Dad, I was blind before. Now Qin Liwen doesn't seem like much at all." My father stared at me for a long while, still looking skeptical. After all, just last night I was desperately begging Qin Liwen to stay at my place, and today I'm acting as if nothing happened. Forget it. To be honest, I never thought that young man was reliable anyway. Living with us might not have been peaceful. At dinner, my mother, probably thinking that Lin Shurian was new in town and deserved a proper meal, gritted her teeth and grabbed the fattest chicken from the coop. After hearing my idea from my father, she even muttered, "We're only doing this because educated youth Lin is here. If it were that Qin Liwen, even an egg would be too rich for him." Only then did I realize that my parents had never liked Qin Liwen. They had only tolerated him because of me. Then, thinking about Lin Shurian's arrival, she quickly made a sweet poached egg as well. Lin Shurian looked at the bowl of sweet soup with golden egg flowers floating in it and quickly pushed it toward me. "Su Qing, you have it. I'm not thirsty." I quickly turned my head away. "Eat yours. This stuff is way too sweet. I've long gotten sick of it." Ha 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 ha. The female supporting character's eyes are practically glued to the bowl, yet here she is pretending not to care, champion of saying one thing and meaning another. How is this kind of contrasting cuteness actually kind of cute? T/N. Contrasting cuteness refers to gap mo, where a mismatch between appearance/behavior and expectation creates an endearing quality. I feel like the female lead is better off staying at the female supporting character's house. Her parents don't seem like the type to enable bad behavior. After the meal, Lin Shurian picked up a bag of grain and said, "Auntie, this is my ration. From now on, let's mix it with the household grain when cooking." My mother didn't stand on ceremony either. "Don't you worry, educated youth Lin, our family isn't stingy. Whatever we eat, you eat. We won't let you go hungry." Lin Shurian smiled and nodded, her eyes filled with ease. But that night, I slept very restlessly. As soon as I closed my eyes, scenes from my past life came flooding back. The look on Qin Liwen's face when he asked my mother for food coupons before returning to the city. Qin Liwen pushing me down the stairs. Qin Liwen calling me a cripple in front of my father. And those words, "It's all because of you that Lin Shurian has suffered so much." 7. Even after waking up, my heart was still pounding, and cold sweat covered my forehead. I immediately got out of bed and walked to the outside of the West Wing, terrified that Qin Liwen might be living there. But before my hand could even touch the door panel, it swung open on its own. Lin Shurian walked out, her hair neatly combed, wearing a faded blue cotton jacket. She paused briefly when she saw me, then narrowed her eyes and said, "Su Qing, good morning." My suspended heart thumped back into place. "Morning, Lin Shurian, ahem, did you sleep well?" It was only when we sat down for breakfast that I learned Lin Shurian had gotten up before dawn. She had even helped my mother prepare the morning meal. If my mother hadn't urged her repeatedly to go back, she would have stayed to help with the laundry too. In truth, it took only one night for me to realize that my mother genuinely liked Lin Shurian from the bottom of her heart. In my previous life, her kindness toward Qin Liwen had been purely because she couldn't resist my relentless pestering. But Lin Shurian was truly diligent. She would follow along too, fetch water before dawn and take the initiative to wash the dishes after meals. Even when my mom was stitching shawls, she would be there helping thread the needle. She always had an eye for work and moved with efficiency. My mom would murmur, "How nice it would be if this girl were my daughter-in-law." Unfortunately, my brother had already passed away, leaving me as the only child at home. After finishing the meal, Lin Shurian would go to the fields on time to work. As for me, following my dad's arrangement, I'd go to the brigade office every day to help organize the accounts. Easier than being out in the fields under the sun. 8. The brigade accountant had to go to the commune for 2 weeks of training, and before leaving, he handed over the task of organizing the accounts to me. Perhaps thanks to my past life experience, this time I handled the ledger work with ease. Even the workpoint sheets, which I had previously found difficult, were completed in no time. It suddenly occurred to me that Lin Shurian had come to me that morning for plant ash and a menstrual belt. Worried that something might have happened to her, I hurried toward the fields. The educated youths, trouser legs rolled up and backs bent, were learning to transplant rice seedlings alongside an old farmer. Lu Wei, sharp-eyed, spotted me from afar and elbowed Qin Liwen beside him. "Look, Su Qing is here again. I told you she can't do without you, right? She must have regretted it last night." Qin Liwen, who had been bent over planting seedlings, straightened up at these words and slowly rolled his mud-stained trouser cuffs a little higher. He stood in the paddy field, his rice transplanting movements even carrying a deliberate, pretentious refinement. In my past life, by now I would have already blushed and rushed over. Afraid he might suffer or tire himself out, I would have pestered others to make sure Qin Liwen got full work points. But now I ignored him and went straight to hand the water bottle to Lin Shurian, who looked pale. "Educated youth Lin, I brought your water bottle over." At the same time, a clear voice called out from behind, "Educated youth Qing, educated youth Qing." 9. That shrill voice. I turned to look, and sure enough, it was Su Yume, fourth of the village head's family. She wore the same style of braided pigtails as Lin Shurian, and a similar blue cloth jacket. I had imitated that look before too, but it didn't have Lin Shurian's elegance at all. Instead, it looked somewhat mismatched and awkward. In my past life, I had plenty of arguments with her over Qin Liwen. She called me a nuisance who won't let go, and I cursed her for wishful thinking. Once, while doing laundry by the river, we nearly flipped each other's wooden basins into the water. In the end, the village chief was so troubled that he asked a distant relative in the county town to take Suyume to help mind a shop, and that finally stopped the fights. Now, having apparently heard that Qin Liwen had been assigned to Widow Li's house, she shot me a fierce glare. Suyume ran straight to Qin Liwen's side. "Qin Liwen, my east wing is empty, clean, and bright. Do you want to move into my place?" "See, I told you the female supporting character is doing this on purpose." First she pushes Qing Liwen away, and when the third female lead rushes over, she sneaks back. Isn't that obvious panic? Look at her. Just now she told the third female lead that she doesn't care about Qing Liwen, and now she's following along. Is she following along for Qing Liwen? Then why did she head straight for Lin Shiyan without even glancing in Qing Liwen's direction? You can't say that. If Su Qingzhen calls Qing Liwen back to her own house, what happens to Lin Shiyan? Will she be reassigned to Widow Li's place? 10. Qing Liwen didn't answer Su Yume directly. Instead, he shot a glance my way, probably thinking I came with Su Yume and wanted to see if I was jealous. Lu Wei chuckled nearby. Ooh, Qing Liwen's got some charm. No. Sooner is Su Qing gone than Su Yume shows up. Su Yume blushed at his words. I'm serious. My place is way better than the Widow Li's, and my mom can make fried pancakes. Qing Liwen gave Su Yume a gentle smile. Comrade Yume, that would be too kind of you. People around us looked our way and leaned in to listen, perhaps finding Su Yume's words too blunt. Qing Liwen put on a serious face. Assigning housing for educated youths is the brigade's decision. As educated youths, we must obey orders. That's what he said, but his eyes kept darting to Su Yume's face, clearly waiting for her to persuade him further. Su Yume, unable to read between the lines, gazed at him with admiration. But you're an intellectual. Your hands are meant for holding a pen. How could you do backbreaking work like bending over to plant seedlings? Let me talk to my dad and have him assign you to keep the books at the team's warehouse. That's easy work. That remark sounded familiar. I said the same thing to my father. When she said this, Lin Shiyan was right beside Qing Liwen. The sun was scorching. The fine hairs on her forehead were soaked with sweat, yet her hands never stopped moving, still deftly separating seedlings and pressing them into the mud, her motion steadier than even some veteran farm workers. Lin Shiyan straightened up, probably because her legs had gone numb from squatting for too long. When she realized I was holding brown sugar water, she smiled at me, revealing two faint dimples. Thank you. Are you really not taking Qing Liwen seriously anymore? Lu Wei had sidled up next to me at some point, watching me with a teasing look. Back in the day, if he'd said 2 extra words to some other girl, you'd have already blown your top. I was pouring water into Lin Shiyan's bowl, and without looking up, I replied, that's not fair. What kind of relationship could I possibly have with Qing Liwen? 11. Yeah. What kind of relationship? Really, Qing Liwen never wanted to be seen too close to me in public. He always said, it wouldn't look good if people saw us. It would ruin your reputation. Every time he asked to meet, he'd pick the old locust tree by the river, and I'd have to go wait there first. But when I gave him the Dacron shirt I'd saved months of cloth ration coupons to buy, he took it. And when my mother had someone bring malted milk from the county town, he took that too. But in the eyes of outsiders, it always seemed like I was the one pushing it. Lu Wei suddenly spoke in a sarcastic tone. Su Qing, weren't you always trying to get close to Qing Liwen? Are you really that fickle? For a moment, I was dumbfounded, not knowing what Lu Wei was talking about. Then I heard Lin Shiyan's voice from behind. Lu Wei, you're an educated youth. We came to the countryside to support the nation, not to gossip. Just do your own work. Lu Wei was choked up for a second. Fine, fine, fine. Lin Shiyan, you'd better watch out for this Su Qing. She's not simple. Last time she nearly pushed Su Yume into the river. That's how vicious she is. How dare you slander someone like that? I shot to my feet, trembling with rage. It was clearly Su Yume's basin that fell into the river, and she slipped and fell in herself. Lu Wei ran off with a hoe on his shoulder. I remembered how, in my previous life, after I became paralyzed, Dad took me to the police. When the police summoned Lu Wei, he claimed he knew nothing. Thinking of all this, I suddenly felt drained of strength and squatted back by the edge of the field, dejected. Su Qing, ignore him. Lin Shiyan walked over and patted me on the shoulder. I kept my head down and said nothing, my eyes growing a little hot. I believe you. Huh. I snapped my head up to look at Lin Shiyan. There wasn't a trace of doubt in her eyes. In all my years, apart from my parents, no one had ever believed in me so firmly. What Lin Shiyan said next caught me even more off guard. Actually, I don't know Qing Liwen that well, I murmured. But Qing Liwen always said he liked you, that you were kindred spirits, and that you two planned to go to the countryside together. You see, Qing Liwen's memoirs sold like hotcakes in my previous life. He was almost as famous as Under the Hawthorn Tree. Countless people have shed tears over the love story of Qing Liwen and Lin Shiyan, yet Lin Shiyan's expression was cold, her eyes full of impatience. No, I have nothing to do with Qing Liwen. The only reason we ended up on the same track to the countryside was that we were assigned to the same commune. She said those flirtatious words were all spread by Qin Liwen himself. She said Qin Liwen had spoken less to her than she spoke every day to the cadre who kept work points. She said people around her always looked at her through tinted glasses, and when she learned that I had feelings for Qin Liwen, she felt nothing but relief to finally be rid of him. 12. Qin Liwen and Su Yume were still chatting back and forth by the edge of the field ridge, while old cadre Zhang, the workpoint keeper beside them, had long been frowning. He could not stand young people lazing about and chatting while working. In a deep voice, he said, "Yume girl, go back to the village if you want to talk. Stop bothering the educated youth here while they're working. Who's going to take responsibility if the work hours are wasted?" Su Yume glanced at old cadre Zhang's stern face and left reluctantly. As soon as she walked away, Qin Liwen turned to me, his tone clearly probing. "Su Qing, weren't you saying last time that you wanted me to help you copy a few quotes to post on the wall? I'm free after work today." Yet these fields were clearly planted by other educated youths through hard work. What's going on? The male lead is actually initiating a conversation with the supporting female character. Is he realizing he can't do without Su Qing? Wake up, people. He's not initiating anything. He only remembered Su Qing's good points after failing to keep Su Yume around. And haven't you noticed, Lin Shiyan planted most of the seedlings by herself, while Qin Liwen just stood beside her putting on a show. I really feel for Lin Shiyan. Sweat was dripping into her eyes, but she still kept working with her head down. He probably thought my earlier coldness was just an act, that as long as he offered a little opening, I would fall all over him like before. No need. My mom has already asked Teacher Wang from the village elementary school. Her handwriting is better than yours. I was tidying up the sweet syrup kettle, ready to head back to the office. Qin Liwen's face stiffened for a moment. 13. It seemed that Su Yume had failed to persuade her father. The village chief was a man who placed great importance on rules. How could he change the production team's assignments just because his daughter said so? Qin Liwen still lived at Widow Li's place. Every day, heading to and from work, he would occasionally slow down as he passed by the wall of my yard, but he never found me chasing after him like I did in my previous life. He probably hadn't yet experienced what Widow Li's household was really like. Widow Li seems warm and welcoming on the surface, but in reality, she's stingy to the bone. She pretends to serve Qin Liwen hot water, but behind his back, she even skimps half a bowl of his rations. She's also an expert at putting on a show. Whenever she sees a brigade cadre, she plays the victim, crying about how much she takes care of the educated youth. In the previous life, she was even worse. When Lin Shiyan was assigned to her home, the packages sent by her family, things like powdered milk and fabric, were all hidden away by Widow Li under the pretense of keeping them safe for you. By the time Lin Shiyan found out, Zhu had already stolen and eaten all the milk powder, and the fabric had been altered by Widow Li as a gift for her niece. All of this was written in Qin Liwen's memoirs. Every time he mentions it, he expresses deep disgust toward her. Now that he has taken Lin Shiyan's place to suffer this ordeal, he probably won't resent me for it, right? 14. One morning, about half a month later, a sudden commotion broke out in the cornfield. Comrade educated youth Qing has fainted. By the time Lin Shiyan and I got there, Qin Liwen had already been carried to the ridge of the field. His face was as pale as paper, and his lips were tinged with blue. Lu Wei was pacing beside him, frantic and helpless, only able to shout at the top of his lungs, "Li Wen, wake up!" Lin Shiyan kept her composure. She pulled a small water flask from her cloth bag. It was filled with sugar water she had been reluctant to drink herself. She pried open Qin Liwen's mouth and poured it in bit by bit. After a long while, Qin Liwen slowly opened his eyes. His voice was as faint as a mosquito's hum. What happened to me?" The brigade doctor, who had just arrived, crouched down to examine him and said, "Low blood sugar, nothing serious, just hunger. Make sure he eats some proper meals. Don't just give him thin porridge all the time." The brigade doctor turned to Qin Liwen and asked, "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" Qin Liwen's Adam's apple bobbed, and his voice came out hoarse. Just a bowl of plain rice porridge." No sooner had he said this than Widow Li, who had come to watch the drama, suddenly cried out, "Aya," and plopped down on the ground, wailing, "Oh, educated youth. Qing, if something happens to you, how am I ever going to explain this to the village?" 15. Wiping her tears with her sleeve, she slapped her thigh and yelled, "I've been working my tail off from dawn to dusk cooking for you, and I even boiled you an egg the day before yesterday. How can you just act like it's nothing?" Her lament echoed across the ridge, and everyone could tell she was just covering her own back. Qin Liwen, still sitting to the side, hadn't even had a chance to speak before Someone helped him over to rest in the shade of a tree naturally. He couldn't work today, and his work points were lost. Lu Wei was the sort to shirk and cut corners, unconcerned even about his own work points, let alone Qing Liwen's. In the afternoon, as I stepped out of the brigade office, I saw Qing Liwen walking toward me. Unsteady with every step, the sun stretched his shadow far behind him. His face had lost its usual arrogance, leaving only an undisguised frailty. Su Qing, could you lend me some food coupons? His voice left me feeling somewhat dazed. I looked at Qing Liwen, now with a pallid, bluish face and eyes devoid of spirit. The work he did now was completely different from what he did in my family in the past life. Back then, I used to pester my father all the time. After Qing Liwen moved in with us, my father assigned him light work, recording work points and copying out notices. He could earn a full day's work points just by hanging around the brigade headquarters for 2 hours every day. But now, before dawn each day, he has to go down to the fields with the villagers, bend over transplanting rice seedlings, swinging a hoe to weed. There's no escaping any of it. And besides, how could Widow Li's place compare with the educated youth settlement? At the settlement, there was at least a communal kitchen, with thick porridge for every meal. Widow Li was famously stingy in her household, and the cornmeal gruel she brought to Qing Liwen was so thin you could see the bottom of the bowl, not to mention white flour buns. Even pickled vegetables came only as a single chopstick's worth. 2 weeks of this non-stop grind would wear anyone down to the bone. What was most infuriating was her dim-witted son, Erju, who would often let out sudden screams in the middle of the night. Sometimes he'd even run barefoot to the door of her room, slap the wooden panels, and shout, "I want a new bride, new bride. Open the door." The male lead had written so grandiosely in his memoirs about how hard he worked in the countryside back in the day, tempering his will. So why is it that after just a few days of hardship now, he's rushing to have the female supporting character bail him out? More than strange, he used to avoid Su Qing like the plague, but now that she's ignoring him, he's chasing after her for food coupons. That's not affection, it's treating Su Qing like a free pantry. His once fair face had darkened from the sun, his messy hair plastered to his forehead. Where was the dignity of a scholar now? But I also remember how in the past life, Lin Shiyan always showed up for work from Widow Li's place clean and presentable. Those eyes were always radiant. I shook my head. I don't have any. Before Qing Liwen could even speak, the moment I noticed he was in any difficulty, I would directly take out food coupons, stuff them into his hand, and leave. He always asks to borrow, but he's never paid back a single time. If you really can't hold on anymore, go talk to the team leader and ask him to find you another place to stay. With those words, I turned and left without looking back at him. 16. After that day in the fields, I never saw him again. The Widow Li couldn't bear to give up Qing Liwen's food rations. Every time the team leader went to ask, Widow Li naturally said she would take care of Qing Liwen like her own son, but that Qing Liwen fainted from time to time, which the villagers had indeed seen with their own eyes. Just when I thought that Qing Liwen would take the initiative to ask the team leader for a different housing arrangement, that very day, Su Yumei fell into the river, and Qing Liwen was the one who jumped in to save her. The villagers didn't see exactly what happened in the end. Qing Liwen leaped in and pulled her out. When Su Yumei was carried home by her crying mother, Qing Liwen lay sprawled unconscious on the riverbank. It was said that he used up too much energy saving her and nearly went under himself. Su Yumei's father, the village head, looked at the unconscious Qing Liwen, then at his daughter's pale face, and immediately made a decision. Carry educated youth Qing to our East Wing room, let your mother take good care of him. And so, Qing Liwen naturally moved out of the Widow Li's house and into Su Yumei's home. 17. When I arrived at the brigade office, I happened to run into Su Yumei's mother walking home with a basket containing brown sugar and eggs. She was telling everyone she met, thank goodness for educated youth Qing, or my Yumei would be gone. That child is so honest, he nearly sacrificed himself to save her. He really needs some good nourishment. Lu Wei sidled up to me and said with a knowing grin, see, Qing Liwen's got his ways, doesn't he? Now he'll not only live in a nice house but also eat white flour steamed buns every day. I didn't respond, only remembering how frantic Qing Liwen looked the last time he asked me for food coupons. Could this be a self-inflicted injury plot? He just wants to escape the quagmire of living at Widow Li's place. Don't you think this is a bit strange? I turned to ask Lu Wei. Qing Liwen could barely stand straight during work before. How come he had the strength to jump into the river and save someone today? Lu Wei's face stiffened. Can't you just be happy for Qing Liwen? I fell silent, my gaze fixed on the direction of Su Yumei's courtyard in the distance, a heaviness settling in my chest. 18. Su Yumei didn't have a bad heart, but I couldn't shake off my unease, so in the afternoon I deliberately made a detour to the outside of the village chief's courtyard wall. Just then, I saw Qin Liwen sitting on a stone stool in the yard, soaking up the sun, while Su Yume handed him water. After a long while, Qin Liwen finally went inside to rest. When I pushed open the half-closed gate and stepped in, Su Yume's smile faded slightly at the sight of me. "What are you doing here?" I looked her straight in the eye. "Did you do it on purpose? You've walked those riverside stones for over a decade. How could you suddenly slip? What are you talking about? Qin Liwen is not a good person. He's just using this as an excuse to move into your house." At this, Su Yume put her enamel cup down on the stone table. "I'm happy to have him here. So what if that's his intention?" I was about to say more about Qin Liwen's true nature, but the words were cut off before they left my lips. "Su Qing, you just can't stand to see me happy, Su." Yume stood up, her back ramrod straight. "Back when you were chasing after Qin Liwen, you'd glare at me even if I just said one word to him. Now that he's staying at my place, you come around every few days to badmouth him. Su Qing, don't be so petty." Looking at the stubbornness in her eyes, I suddenly found myself at a loss for words. Some people never change direction until they hit a wall. What is Su Qing up to? Can't stand seeing the male lead doing well. Don't you think something's off about this male lead? How come all the good luck falls into his lap? Stop with the baseless criticism. And the key point is, the female lead is living a really good life now, staying at Su Qing's place without having to take any crap. To be honest, does Su Qing even care about the male lead anymore? She's way more likable now than when she was chasing after Qin Liwen. Qin Liwen and Su Yume can do whatever they want, as long as they leave the female lead alone. You'd better look out for yourself. I turned and walked outside, feeling a tightness in my chest. "Hey, Su Qing, Qin Liwen is staying at my place now, and my dad is the village chief. If he tries any tricks, my dad will be the first to make sure he doesn't get away with it." Su Yume's voice suddenly came from behind me. 19, Su Qing, did something happen to you? Seeing my gloomy expression as I returned, Lin Shurian asked. During this time, our relationship had been neither good nor bad. We had hardly mentioned Qin Liwen, but now I hesitated for a long time, then finally spoke. If Qin Liwen really ends up with Su Yume, I can't help but feel like a sinner." Although Su Yume is quick-tempered, she has a kind heart. If she truly gets together with Qin Liwen, there's no telling how much unhappiness she might suffer. Lin Shurian did not stop what she was doing, her voice soft. "Everyone makes their own choices. These were their decisions. None of them have anything to do with you." They do. Suddenly overcome with emotion, I burst into wails. "Lin Shurian, if I hadn't changed my mind, Qin Liwen would have stayed at my house. Then you would have been the one assigned to the widow Li's place. You would have had such a hard life." Lin Shurian was stunned. Finally, I spoke the words from my past life. "I'm sorry, Lin Shurian, I am sorry. Back then, I was too foolish, only thinking of myself." 20, "No, Su Qing, you're wrong. This has nothing to do with you." Lin Shurian suddenly spoke up. "What? You never meant to harm me, so why would you ever need to apologize to me?" "But it's because of me." What she said was completely different from Qin Liwen, but Qin Liwen's accusation still rang in my ears. "If it weren't for you, Lin Shurian wouldn't have suffered so much. This is my life." Lin Shurian turned her head to look at me, her eyes startlingly bright. "Even if I'm assigned to Widow Li's house and things go badly, I won't give up. I'll earn work points, find ways to read, and wait for a chance to return to the city, instead of waiting for someone else to hand me an opportunity." But Qin Liwen said, I had let it slip and nearly revealed things from my past life. People like Qin Liwen only ever think of themselves. Even if you hadn't changed your mind and he stayed at your place, seeing me assigned to Widow Li's house, he would never do a thing. He complains even when his own living situation is uncomfortable. Why would he care about others' lives? Hearing these words struck me like a thunderbolt. I thought back to the things that happened in my past life. That's right, if Qin Liwen truly cared so much about Lin Shurian, why didn't he help her move out of the Li family's house instead? He himself enjoys the convenient life I've provided. The more I read, the stranger it seems. In the male lead Qin Liwen's memoir, he writes that he once had mutual feelings for educated youth Lin. I'm afraid he just made that up in his own mind, right? The female lead, the baby, is dripping with disdain for Qin Liwen in every word. I bet her feelings for the supporting female character are more genuine than anything she feels for Qin Liwen. Exactly. How can you fully trust a personal memoir? A man like Qin Liwen always loves to put a shine on his own image. He probably had a rough go of it later in life and just romanticized what happened back then. So I don't have to bear the fate of others. She looks at me with a kind of transparent calm in her eyes. It's like how I'm living here now, you. Give me a chance, but the rest of the road, I have to walk it myself. 21 The words Lin Shurian said that day completely untied the knot in my heart. Early that morning, my mother went to the village school to deliver pickled vegetables. When she came back, she said Teacher Wang was pregnant and her legs were so swollen that she wanted to find a substitute teacher for half a year. Lin Shurian was the first person who came to my mind. Her academic foundation was solid, and her handwriting was beautiful. She was the perfect fit. When I mentioned it to my father, he went to the village chief that same day. Knowing that Lin Shurian loved to study, the chief immediately made the decision, let her come and try out. The interview is tomorrow. On the day of Lin Shurian's interview, the village chief and Teacher Wang were beyond satisfied. It's you, start teaching in a couple of days. But today, when I brought her to the brigade office to pick up teaching materials, just as we reached the door, I heard Su Yumei's voice coming from inside. Qing Liwen was wearing his newly made blue khaki jacket, cuffs ironed crisp, once again radiating the confident energy of an educated man. Leaning close to her father, Su Yumei was playfully urging him, Dad, Liwen and I are going to town to shop after his class, hurry up. It hit me all at once. So Qing Liwen also wanted to play the role of substitute teacher. Even more surprising was how quickly he had gotten engaged to Su Yumei. I walked straight to the village chief's desk. Chief, we're here to pick up Teacher Lin's teaching materials. The village chief fiddled with his tobacco pouch for a while. Su Qing, Lin Shurian, educated youth. We later found out Qing Liwen is more suitable for teaching, so for now, Lin Shurian, educated youth, doesn't need to come to the village school. My tone was a bit agitated, but we clearly agreed. Lin Shurian tugged at my sleeve, signaling me not to be impulsive. Isn't the memoir still saying that the female supporting character is the one who separates them? Now it seems he's just choosing the easiest path for himself. Laughable. He talks about his lifelong regret being missing out on educated youth Lin, and now he's even fighting for a light substitute teaching job in the village. If you believe a man's deep affection, you might as well believe I'm Qin Shi Huang. A man's deep affection and ambitions are as fragile as a piece of thin paper when faced with real interests. Glancing at Su Yumei's arrogant expression, I had to swallow my resentment. I understand, village chief. After we stepped out, Qin Liwen chased after us and asked knowingly, Su Qing, Lin Shurian, are you here on business too? Yumei and I are just heading to the supply and marketing co-op to get some cloth for our engagement outfits. That pose was like showing off. Su Yumei also puffed out her chest and shook the red string on her wrist. Once we're engaged, we'll treat the whole village to candy. Su Qing, you have to come. 22 Lin Shurian, I'm sorry. After Qing Liwen and Su Yumei walked away arm in arm, I said ruefully. Lin Shurian comforted me. It's good that you could at least try. You can't force these things. It wasn't just trying. Looking at the unopened teaching materials in Lin Shurian's arms, I felt something stuck in my chest. Just last night, she had still been preparing materials for the Blackboard newspaper. I stared into her eyes and suddenly remembered the news about the college entrance exam. By then, who would still care about a substitute teaching post in a village school? It's okay, Lin Shurian, just wait another 6 months. Lin Shurian looked at me in confusion, her eyebrows slightly raised. 6 months, I nodded firmly. Yes, in 6 months, there will be a huge opportunity, much better than being a substitute teacher. Then you can go anywhere you want, teach on any kind of platform you like. As for Qing Liwen, he's already this smug just for grabbing a substitute teaching post. When the news about the college entrance exam arrives, he'll find himself tied down by his identity as the village chief's son-in-law, when the very qualification to register depends on the Su family's favor. Won't he probably regret it more than anyone else? 23 Sure enough, just 6 months after Qing Liwen and Su Yumei got married, the college entrance examinations were reinstated. Upon hearing the news, the sent-down youths immediately dropped their work and wept in each other's arms. Even the typically composed Lin Shurian could not help but have red-rimmed eyes. She had been quietly reading all along, refusing to give up. This was the opportunity they had waited so many years for. When my parents heard the news about the exams, they rummaged through chests and boxes all night, pulling out all the old books that had been tucked away at the bottom. The next day, she asked a relative going to the county town to pick up a few usable tutoring books, and shoved them into Lin Shurian's hands the moment they arrived. Shurian, stop working in the fields. From today on, stay home and study. Let Su Qing do all the chores. I quickly cleared out an old wooden box to set up a makeshift desk for her. Well, the female supporting character is quite nice. This is letting Lin Shurian study in peace for the exam. Even a real sister couldn't do more, right? That's true. But what if she tries to sabotage her before the college entrance exam? The commenter above, don't be so petty. At this point, what harm could she really do? You'll be proven wrong. When I carried the old book box over, I saw Lin Shurian smiling at me. Su Qing, don't just focus on helping me, study along with me. I was stunned and pointed at my own nose. Me, go to college. In this life, I never even finished middle school. It's already good enough that I can recognize all the characters. I never thought about taking the college entrance exam in my past life. I was too busy chasing Qing Liwen, even attending literacy classes just to get closer to him. I also want to study for the college entrance exam with him and go to university, but after teaching me for just 2 days, Qing Liwen put on a sour face. How can you be so dumb? Even a pig is better than you. Forget it, Su Qing, don't bother with this. Just let me focus on getting into college, and you can wait around and enjoy the good life. A little embarrassed, I scratched my head. At my age, learning this, I probably can't do it, right? Lin Shurian, why can't you? Didn't the squadron leader even praise you for being especially quick and keeping the accounts very clearly? I was just about to shake my head when my mother walked in with freshly boiled eggs. Give it a try, girl. Our family hasn't produced a college student yet. If the two of you get in, I'll go burn some incense for our ancestors. My heart pounded wildly at these words. My brother passed away young, so I'm the only daughter in the family. But when Qing Liwen received his admission letter, he did so as my fiancé. My parents' eyes were full of excitement as they talked about taking the letter to offer incense to the ancestors. Later, Qing Liwen took the admission letter and went straight back to the city, leaving my parents deeply disappointed. What if this time, I'm the one who gets the admission letter? Even if it's not from Hua University, it would still bring them some honor, wouldn't it? 24. And so, I followed Lin Shurian and studied diligently with her for 40 days every day. Even my dreams were filled with the contents of the books. On the day I went to register, Qing Liwen's figure unexpectedly appeared in the crowd. Su Yume was right beside him, watching us warily. I heard that on the very day the college entrance examination was reinstated, he shut himself in the East Wing and stayed up late poring over the textbooks he had brought earlier. The next morning, he told Su Yume that he wanted to focus on reviewing. As soon as he said that, Su Yume exploded. 5 months pregnant, she glared at him with resentment. You want to go to college, so you can leave and never come back. What about me and the child? Qing Liwen hurriedly defended himself. If I get into college, I can give you a better life. I can't stay in this village forever, can I? But I want to stay in the village. The two argued loudly inside the house, their voices loud enough for half the village to hear. The village chief came over and, looking at Su Yume's tear-swollen eyes, said, Liwen, as the Su family's son-in-law, you need to act like one. Yume is pregnant, you can't upset her like this. In the end, in front of Su Yume's father and 3 older brothers, Qing Liwen wrote a pledge, pressed his red thumbprint on it, and swore that after he finished college, he would take Su Yume to live in the city. But Su Yume was probably still afraid, so she always liked to order him around. She made him fetch water, chop firewood, and even had him sit beside her while she mended clothes. Calling it cultivating the couple's bond, Su Yume's 3 older brothers were no pushovers either, coming back every few days to browbeat their brother-in-law. How could Qing Liwen endure such treatment? In his previous life, when he was at my house, my parents treated him like a guest and wouldn't let him do any heavy work, so he could sit comfortably in the room and read. But now, if he wanted to pick up his textbooks, he had to sneak a few pages while Su Yume was taking her afternoon nap. Qing Liwen saw me filling out the registration form too and said in disbelief, You're taking the college entrance exam too? I was carefully writing my own name. Yeah, he probably thought I was messing around and put on an air of experience. Su Qing, take my advice, getting into college isn't that easy, you need a solid foundation. I don't think it's that hard. I handed in the registration form and smiled at him. After all, I don't have a family to tie me down. Besides, Lin Shurian said, I'm very smart and pick things up right away. 25. In April of the following year, the postman started delivering admission letters one after another. Every day he arrived with a bulging mailbag and began calling out names. As soon as he reached the village headquarters, 7 or 8 educated youth had been accepted. The day Lin Shurian's letter arrived, the postman raised his voice on purpose. Comrade Lin Shurian, an admission letter from Hua University. The whole village exploded. It's Hua University. The village chief's hands trembled as he held the admission letter stamped with the school emblem. He checked it 3 times before handing it to her, but Qing Liwen never received it. It was said that on the day of the exam, Qing Liwen suddenly had severe diarrhea and fainted right in the examination hall. I waited in the office every day, but my name never appeared each time. I left the brigade office disappointed. Once, Qing Liwen even came to comfort me. Su Qing, don't blame me for being blunt, you're too stupid to pass the exam. I ignored him, and so another 5 days passed. That day, as I was helping Lin Shurian pack for her trip to Beijing, the postman suddenly called out from outside the courtyard, Su Qing, an admission letter from Beijing. What? I took the envelope and looked at it carefully. It really was for me, and the school was one that Lin Shurian had circled for me earlier. It wasn't far from her university. I got in, Lin Shurian, I actually got in. She leaned in to look, even happier than when she had received her own acceptance letter. Su Qing, I knew you could do it. Thank you, Lin Shurian. I suddenly felt a twinge of sadness. If you hadn't dragged me into studying with you and taught me how to solve problems, I wouldn't even have been able to understand the textbooks. In my wildest dreams, I never thought I could get into college. In my previous life, my biggest aspiration was just to follow Qing Liwen to the county town, but in this life, I can go to college on my own, all because of this person beside me. Lin Shurian shook her head, though. No, Su Qing, that was still the result of your own hard work. The name on that acceptance letter was earned by your own effort, stroke by stroke. 26. The village held a welcome ceremony for the educated youths and villagers who had gotten into college. Lin Shurian and I sat at the long table, listening intently as the other educated youths introduced the universities they had been admitted to. I heard tuition is completely waived. We get a monthly living stipend, and after graduation we'll be directly assigned as teachers. The educated youths beside him nodded in agreement. Our school was the same, guaranteed job assignments, no need to worry about work. Just then, a sudden commotion broke out at the next table. We turned to look and saw Qing Liwen gripping a wine bottle, pointing at Lu Wei across from him. Why did you get in, Lu Wei? You didn't even know basic trigonometry back then. It shouldn't be like this. This isn't how it should be for me. Lu Wei looked a bit embarrassed. What nonsense are you talking about? I was a high school student. I was supposed to be better than all of you. How come you get to go to the normal university, and Su Qing, that country girl, gets to go to Beijing, while I can't get into anything? By then, anyone with eyes could hear the resentment in his voice. Nothing remained of the spirited confidence he had in his previous life when he received Huada University's admission letter. The brigade leader shook his head as he looked at Qing Liwen, then turned to those trying to mediate. He's just having a hard time accepting it. It's okay, universities don't admit only once, he can try again next time. In the end, Su Yume, embarrassed by the scene, half-dragged and half-pulled Qing Liwen away. 27. Lin Shurian and I went to study in Beijing together, and life was very fulfilling. The shadow of my past life gradually faded away. As for news of Qing Liwen, I heard it from my mother when I came home for winter break, that Qing Liwen has really lost his mind. I heard he repeated the exam several more times, but before every test, he would either have a fever or sprain his ankle. It was said that once he actually did pretty well on the exams, but the admission letter just never reached him. Only later did people find out that Su Yume's older brother, working at the commune post office, had intercepted it. He probably suspected the Su family was behind it and wanted to return to town to live with his parents, but his younger brother had already married and had children, leaving no place for him in the city. Later, not until Su Yume's child could run and jump did the Su family feel he wouldn't run away, and they loosened their grip so he could focus on retaking the exams. But Qing Liwen finally managed to get into a halfway decent university. However, only 6 months in, he was spotted pushing and shoving with a female student in the library. In the end, Su Yume's 3 brothers went to his school. When Qing Liwen flatly denied it, Su Yume's eldest brother broke his leg on the spot, while her third brother filed a report accusing Qing Liwen of concealing his marital status and intending to abandon his wife and daughter. Morality was taken very seriously back then. After receiving the report, the university immediately called Qing Liwen in for questioning and expelled him. In the end, Qing Liwen could only slink back in disgrace. After returning to the village, Qing Liwen stayed cooped up in the Su family's east wing all day and refused to work in the fields. In less than 2 years, he gained weight, with a bulging belly. One day, after a quarrel with Su Yume, she said, "You Qing, get out, I'm not waiting on a useless loser like you." One day, Lin Shurian and I went back to the village to handle some paperwork and saw Qing Liwen wandering at the edge of the village, muttering, "I'm from Hua University, I married a leader's daughter." The end. Story 2. The day I accepted Felix's proposal, countless cameras suddenly emerged from the corners. It turned out that my boyfriend was a popular actor, and our relationship was just a reality dating show for ordinary people. He, who had been looking affectionate just now, calmly hooked the corners of his lips towards the camera and said, "Mission accomplished." I was severely criticized online. People said I was hypocritical, affected, falsely noble, and a scheming woman, and Felix posted a tweet, donating all the appearance fees from the show to mountain area education, thus winning a good reputation. I neither made a fuss nor defended myself. Instead, I obediently went to meet the man arranged by my family on the day of our engagement. That man who seemed so distant and lofty rushed in, panting, losing his usual calmness. His eyes were red as he said, "Sherry, you clearly promised me first," in front of the magnificent building of Stars Entertainment. There were crowds of fans, each of them was glamorous. The cameras in their hands were like long and short guns, and the camera lenses were almost as long as my forearm. The colorful small flower patterned banners they held in their hands, I now know, are called support banners. I was the only one wearing a somewhat faded dress, a big straw hat, a white mask, carrying a canvas backpack, standing at the back of the crowd on tiptoe, looking around. Even in the intense heat of July, the enthusiasm of the crowd remained high. Although I seemed out of place, I was well aware that we were all here for Felix. Felix, a top-tier active actor in the entertainment industry, is not only good-looking but also a talented performer with outstanding acting skills. His affectionate eyes can make people feel that he is deeply in love even when he looks at a dog. In the past 2 years, he has become extremely popular in China because of several hit TV dramas, and has also gained international fame for participating in movies directed by well-known foreign directors. He has achieved great success both on the big screen and on the small screen. Finally, the silent glass door was opened, and a pair of long legs stepped out. Before seeing Felix, the crowd started screaming because the tall and thin young man who came out was Henry, Felix's manager and assistant. However, there was no sign of Felix behind Henry, only 2 staff members wearing baseball caps pushing a small cart. He had a smiling face and seemed very approachable. "It's such a hot day, thank you all for waiting for so long. Felix isn't here today, but we heard that you've been waiting for a long time, so we've prepared milk tea and small gifts for everyone. Everyone will get a share." Upon hearing this, the fans immediately burst into cheers. Seeing that he was about to turn around and enter the door, I used all my strength to push through the crowd, took off my mask, and shouted loudly, "Henry." Henry looked at me and was stunned. "You, Sherry," he said hesitantly in a soft voice. The fans, who had been happy just now, were also stunned. Then an angry voice reacted, "Ah, it's that bitch Sherry." This comment set off a stir. The crowd immediately became restless. There were voices in the crowd such as, "How did she chase him here?" and "She can't still be daydreaming, can she?" The volume was not low, as if they were deliberately letting me hear. I didn't care about these voices. I want to see Felix. I can't get in touch with him, I said clearly. Looking straight at Henry with a calm expression, he still hadn't recovered from his shock and looked embarrassed. "But, the show has ended." "Yes, the show had ended, didn't you hear? The show has ended, lady, you can't still be in the show, can you?" A fan next to me immediately chimed in. I shook my head and didn't waste any more words. "I just want to see him once. You said he's not here. I'll come back tomorrow." There were boos all around. I picked up the hat that had fallen to the ground due to the crowding and turned to leave. Sure enough, my shameless behavior that night made it to the hot search, accompanied by several high-definition photos of me at the entrance of Stars Entertainment. Those photos were taken at rather ingenious moments. Either it was the moment when my hat was knocked off, or it was my running posture when I rushed out. The weather was hot, my clothes were cheap and rustic, and my forehead was covered with sweat. I looked really awkward. There were indeed a lot of harsh comments under this hot search. "Oh my god, the latest aftermath of love portrait. The rustic village girl chases love in city A from afar. I suggest this Miss Sherry go to the hospital to check if she has delusional disorder. No personal attack, but I really think she should go and check, otherwise it will affect her normal life. She really thinks she's a modern-day Cinderella. How ridiculous." There were also various remarks in between, such as, "Felix is so pitiful to be pestered by a crazy person and it's all the fault of the program team. They should compensate Felix some money." The love portrait they mentioned is a reality dating show for ordinary people that became extremely popular on the internet not long ago. The content of the show is to invite popular stars to remote small towns, go deep into places that haven't been affected by the entertainment industry, get along with the ordinary people selected by the program team for a few months with an ordinary identity, get to know each other, date, observe the real emotional journey of ordinary people, show the personal charm of the stars, and highlight the most real human nature. I, Sherry, was the ordinary person selected without my knowledge, as an ordinary person being observed by the program team with a magnifying glass. My performance in all aspects was highly controversial, showing the ugliness of human nature. The reason for the high popularity, of course, was because my partner was the currently most popular actor, Felix. Even in the glamorous entertainment industry, he was one of the very few most prominent people at the top of the pyramid. As for the ugliness of human nature, needless to say, the internet has already compiled a set of love theories about my so-called crimes, and there are countless analysis videos including how I pretended to be innocent, how I created a noble persona but actually seduced men everywhere, how I was calculating and played hard to get to create an ambiguous relationship, and there was even a makeup teaching video of my scheming fake natural makeup. There are so many aspects to this so-called theory, which is profound and complex, with numerous branches. Today, it was like a thunderbolt out of the blue, shocking the whole internet. Everyone was shocked that after being scolded for so long, I was still so shameless that I chased Tissidier from afar, trying to get close to Felix again no matter how much criticism there was. The next day I still showed up at the entrance of Stars Entertainment on time. This time, the fans were on guard. When they saw me appear, they rolled their eyes to the sky, some of them even subtly blocked in front of me. Henry also came out. He used the same words of thanking the fans for their hard work, when he saw me still standing stiffly in the crowd like a telegraph pole, and the gossip paparazzi's cameras in the distance were frantically shooting at me. He sighed subtly. "Sherry, come in with me," he said, trying to ignore those dissatisfied complaints and disdainful glances. I pushed through the crowd and followed him in. I still didn't get to see Felix as I wished. In the low-key but high-class meeting room, Henry was still struggling to explain to me my current situation and my relationship with Felix. "You said all this was just for the show's effect, but no one informed me in advance." "I knew nothing about it," I said, pausing for a moment. "Could it be that my feelings were also just an effect?" Henry shook his head and smiled. "That's not what I mean, Sherry." He seemed to glance at the glass door behind me casually. "You should also know that there are quite a few such reality observation shows for ordinary people these days. Besides dating shows, there are also family relationship shows, urban-rural exchange shows. It can be said that these are all well received by the audience. This is the choice of the market, and as far as I know, after the show ended, the program team also paid you a rather generous remuneration as an appearance fee, and you accepted it." "But I really fell in love with Felix," I interrupted him. Henry spat out the water he had just drunk, looked at the door again, and seeing no movement, he continued, "Sherry, there are so many examples in the world where one person loves while the other doesn't. Maybe because of the days of getting along day and night, you feel that you can't get over it for a while. I can understand that. But people should look forward. If you're not satisfied with the compensation from the program team, our company can also provide you with some appropriate financial support, but you need to sign a legally binding contract under the witness of a lawyer to ensure that you won't have an adverse impact on Mr. Felix's acting career in the future. Why doesn't he come out to see me?" I was a bit dazed, only repeating this sentence. "Sherry." Henry seemed to be tired of this ineffective conversation. He put away his usual friendly smile, called me calmly, and then looked me up and down. This look had no emotion, but it was like a scalpel. After the show ended, and in front of those fans just now, I had felt this kind of gaze too many times. It wasn't contempt, but it was more deadly than contempt. There were only 3 cruel but realistic words in it. "You don't deserve it. Felix also hopes you're well." So he didn't want to see this crazy person who couldn't move on. I knew what he was going to say. I stood up and deliberately raised my voice. "I took a long leave from school. I'll come back tomorrow until Felix is willing to come out and see me." After saying that, I took my bag and walked out. I lied to them. On the 3rd day, I was sitting on the train back to my hometown, looking at the newly spread photos on the internet. Henry was at the entrance of the company building, protecting Felix as he got into the car. He was looking around nervously, as if on guard against someone's appearance. I couldn't help but laugh. I didn't have such a long and luxurious leave to take. I had taken a 30-hour green train to come here, and I would do the same on the way back. It would take a long time on the road. Besides, the accommodation fee in big cities was too expensive for me to afford. I was like an ant trying to shake a big tree, just bluffing them. In the photo, Felix was still the same, with sword-like eyebrows and star-like eyes, incredibly good-looking, and looking calm, as if he wasn't affected at all. I pushed open a little window of the train, and the wind from the mountains rushed towards me noisily before becoming nationally known and often being scolded on the hot search. I was just an ordinary girl in the mountainous area of the Southwest. Although the fans of Felix were very mean-mouthed, there were 3 words in their evaluation of me that were quite accurate: town girl. Saying town was even overestimating me. In fact, the town I lived in was far from prosperous enough to be called a county. The high-speed rail could only reach the city. From the city, I had to take a bus to the county, and then take a small passenger car for over an hour to reach this remote town in the mountains. After many twists and turns, the school where I worked was the only primary school in the town. The total number of teachers and students in the school was only 200 or 300. Most of the students in the school were left behind children, and most of the teachers were also somewhat old. The wind from afar had blown away the young people in the mountains. Whether it was to work or study, no one's roots would be planted here. I was the only teacher in my 20s in the school, content with the status quo and staying in my hometown. There's nothing wrong with being content with the status quo, but the future is predictable. The continuous green mountains, the remote villages, the old teaching buildings, and the innocent children. My life was like the endless slopes in the mountains, like the mother river that had flowed along the mountains since ancient times. The bright moon shines on the peaks, the moon wanes and waxes day after day, without any waves, until that day, Felix appeared. When Principal Zach led him to the office, all the children in the school came to see him. This was quite normal, not to mention these kids who had never left the town. Even I, who had studied in college outside, had never seen such a good-looking person. He was just wearing a down jacket, a white shirt, and jeans, simple and fresh like a college student. But because of his tall and long-legged figure, he looked tall, straight, and outstanding, not to mention his face, which made the little boys and girls lying by the windows have bright eyes. Principal Zach said he was a music teacher coming to teach in the mountains and asked me to show him around and introduce the school's rules, work and rest schedule in the near future. The young man standing at the door, with a slight smile on his lips, stretched out a hand with distinct joints towards me, his eyes as bright as stars and moon. Teacher Sherry, I'm Felix. I'll have to trouble you a lot in the future. With his extremely magnetic and deep voice, and that fleeting glance, an alarm immediately went off in my heart. Although his manner was polite, under his seemingly gentle eyes, there was a hint of unruliness. Even his polite tone was mixed with frivolity and recklessness. It was as if he had everything under control, both what had happened and what was about to happen, with such eyes that hid arrogance, and yet having an incredibly good-looking appearance. This was the kind of person I couldn't handle the most. I said to myself in my heart, don't mention it, you're too polite, Teacher Felix. I put on a fake smile and slightly extended my fingertips to shake his hand in return. Sensing my obvious perfunctoriness and alienation, his somewhat formulaic smile paused for a moment. And then the arc of his lips deepened, as if he had suddenly become interested. Felix was very pampered. The first floor of the staff dormitory was originally occupied by the school leaders and several elderly teachers, but as soon as he came, Principal Zach gave up his dormitory to him and moved to the upper floor. However, Felix didn't appreciate this favor at all. When I took him to the dormitory that had been repeatedly cleaned and tidied up, he obviously frowned. Where's the toilet? He raised his eyelids and asked, looking at the 7 or 8 square meter room where you could almost see the ceiling. The toilet is shared on each floor. It's at the end of the corridor, over there. I pointed to him. The young master's expression didn't change, but I felt that his face darkened. Honest to goodness, this was already the best treatment we could offer. On the first day he went to teach music to the 5th grade students. He thought the school computer was too old and slow. It took a long time to load his teaching materials, and he almost tore apart the computer mainframe on the spot. There was no air conditioner in the school. Each classroom only had a few big ceiling fans, and it was wet and cold in the mountains. He shivered with cold and asked the children in the class if they just endured the winter like this. The children looked at each other, not knowing any other way to get through the winter. He couldn't get used to the food in the cafeteria and didn't come to the teachers' meetings either. When I heard about this, I just smiled, thinking that my first impression was right. Although he seemed gentle and polite at that time, he actually had a temper of a spoiled young master and wouldn't stay here for long. Felix was very clingy. Ever since Principal Zach asked me to take care of him, even after school, he often sent messages to bother me. One moment it was, Teacher Sherry, come down for a moment. This electric heating rod for boiling water seems to be broken. Another moment it was, Teacher Sherry, help, there's a big mouse running under the bed. Every time this happened, I would rush downstairs from the 3rd floor of the teacher's dormitory in my slippers, making a clattering sound, and when I arrived at room 102 in such a hurry in the night, I would find that the heating rod was not broken, and there was no big mouse under the bed either. Only after I fumbled with things for a long time under his gaze and rummaged under the bed with a big broom for a while, would Felix say with a smiling and nonchalant expression, "Maybe I was wrong." He would sit there like a boss overseeing the work, with his long legs crossed, looking leisurely. There was not a trace of guilt on his delicate face, and he would just continue to praise. "Teacher Sherry is really a nice person." His eyes were bright when he said this, and he was really good looking even when I was doing things for him. I had a poker face the whole time, but at this moment, I didn't dare to meet his eyes. Teacher Sherry, ever since he asked me to do things for him a few times, Felix started to call me this in a familiar way. In fact, I was 1 year older than him, but when I refuted, he would stretch out his hand and gesture, "You're so much younger." I looked up at Felix's big palm placed on my head and his height, which was at least 20 centimeters taller than mine, and could only remain silent. Felix was stunned. In daily life, I could tolerate and compromise with him in many ways, but when it came to teaching, I had always been a bit serious and old-fashioned, so, not long after, I got very angry with him because he didn't check whether all the students in the classroom had arrived before class, which allowed 2 half-grown kids to sneak out of the school through a dog hole and play for a whole class. My face turned red with anger as I questioned him. "Have you ever thought about the consequences? Do you really think this is just a game?" He raised his eyelids in confusion. "Let them play for a while. Kids love to play. Can the sky fall? Just give them a lecture. I'll take roll call properly next time." I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and said in a heavy tone, "You've been here for a while. I don't believe you haven't heard the wolves howling in the mountains at night." Felix was stunned. Wolves are extremely hungry and active in winter due to lack of food. What if the kids run into the forest and meet a hungry wolf? What can you do with taking roll call properly next time, Teacher Felix? Don't treat this as your game of experiencing life as a young master. Given that I was already cold to him and we had such a big argument, given that I was plain looking, really ordinary in appearance, always with a bare face, and even deliberately wore big non-prescription glasses to show the solemnity of a teacher, and Felix, although I didn't know any big brands, the clothes and daily items he used every day clearly looked of high quality and were probably expensive. This made me, who was always wearing a thick, dirty, resistant black cotton padded jacket, look even more like a rustic village girl. I didn't really care because the other teachers and kids dressed the same way. We were all plain, and only he was different, and this different person was also very good looking, so it was even more impossible for him to have any interest in me. But he still persevered day by day and showed up beside me as a matter of course. He would sit opposite me during meals and deliberately moved his workstation in the office next to mine even in front of the students and other teachers. He didn't avoid suspicion at all, creating an illusion of being inseparable. Teacher Tina, the math teacher, quietly said to me, "Oh, could it be that Teacher Felix has a crush on you?" I was taken aback. It's impossible to say that when a young and handsome man circles around you all day long, you don't have any thoughts, but in the first 2 months, Felix really made me feel strange. He always made me think he liked me a bit, but also always made me realize that he didn't like me that much. In these 2 months, he would occasionally show straightforward and affectionate eyes, quietly watching me solve all kinds of his life problems. His gaze was so intense that it made me feel uneasy, but after finding that I wasn't affected by this, he would put away all his expressions in a place where he thought I couldn't see and ponder by himself. He was good at talking and always had praises on his lips, like "Teacher Sherry is so cute" and "Teacher Sherry is so amazing." From being a little embarrassed at first, I gradually got tired of hearing them. When he went to the county town on the weekend and came back, he would buy some snacks for the children and gifts for the teachers. When it came to me, besides the gift, there were also flowers on the table. We were all simple-minded people and were too embarrassed to make a fuss. I looked at Felix, and he seemed to blush and pursed his lips, saying, "Picked them by the roadside." I really wanted to ask where in the mountains in winter one could pick such fresh and beautiful flowers, but I didn't say anything. I just shared the flowers with the teachers, a few for each person, and said to him, "Such beautiful flowers should be shared among everyone." In the time it took to say this sentence, the shyness on his face had completely disappeared. He shrugged, looking indifferent and leaving it up to me. Occasionally, Felix would seem to be very interested in my hobbies and experiences. I would tell him when he asked, but I believed that he was just pretending to listen with his chin in his hand. His eyes were serious, But his thoughts must have wandered elsewhere because I told him yesterday that I was almost bitten by a dog when I was a child, so I was always afraid of dogs. Today, he would stand on the playground and shout at me from afar in the sun, asking me to go and touch the big yellow dog lying at his feet. I looked at him in the corridor for a long time and then walked quickly past. I didn't know why his behavior was so inconsistent. Maybe he just regarded me as a pastime in his boring teaching in the mountains life, but I could feel that in some ways, he was gradually changing. Occasionally, when passing by the classroom where Felix was teaching, he would be playing the old wooden piano, seriously teaching the children to sing. The snow has cleared, the sky is bright. Winter sweet blossoms everywhere. Riding a donkey across the bridge, the bells are jingling. At this time, I thought he was cute. When he first came, he would frown if there was a bit of dust on the cabinet, being extremely clean freak. Now, he never disliked the children rolling around and getting dirty, when wiping the faces or even blowing the noses of the lower grade children with dirty faces. He would do it with a normal expression and gentle eyes. At such times, I thought he was cute. Even one night, the snow was so heavy that the chicken coop behind the cafeteria was on the verge of collapsing. He rushed into the coop without hesitation, carrying a chicken under each arm and running out. He did this several times, getting all dirty and smelling of chicken feces. The teachers couldn't help but praise him, but I reminded him, actually, you can just grab the chicken's wings. Felix seemed to just remember and tapped his head. I laughed out loud and thought he was cute. Who said it? Thinking a person is handsome or beautiful doesn't matter. But if you think a person is cute, then you're really in trouble. We interacted like this for 2 or 3 months. It was another winter night, and the night in the mountains was as dark as ink. Although it was only 9 o'clock, I was really tired today, so I went to bed early. When the phone rang again, I rarely lost all my patience. Thinking that the young master was going to order me around again, I answered the phone with resentment. Felix, what on earth do you want? The person on the other side was obviously startled by my blunt question and was silent for a moment. Teacher Sherry, I just wanted to tell you that I bought the book you mentioned last time when I went back this time. Felix's voice was steady, but there seemed to be a hint of imperceptible grievance. Teacher Felix, I took a breath and finally couldn't hold back anymore. You're an adult too. Don't you know what it means to constantly circle around a girl? Don't you know how ambiguous it is to always call her out for a private meeting at night? Going on like this, I'll think you like me. Don't do this and cause unnecessary misunderstandings casually. But Teacher Sherry, I do like you. What should I do? I like you. Felix interrupted me almost without hesitation, and there was even a hint of cheerfulness in his nice voice. I was stunned into wakefulness by his words. Then I sighed. Teacher Felix, although I've never been in a relationship, I'm not stupid. Liking someone isn't like what you do. Forget it. It's hard to explain to you. You'll be leaving in a few months. Don't say such things again. You're so good looking. You can find any girl you want in the future. As I said this, I was about to hang up the phone. Wait a minute, this isn't fair. Felix's voice suddenly rose, and there was even a hint of gnashing of teeth. You've never been in a relationship either. I haven't either. How can you define whether I like you or not, if you really know so much? Then teach me, Sherry. He seemed to calm down a bit, and there was a hint of temptation in the last sentence. Why should I come to the balcony, Sherry? He coaxed me in a nice voice. Interrupting me, I held the phone between my shoulder and ear, put on my coat, and pushed open the door. Just then, with a whoosh, a small spark shot up from the yard into the sky, and then bang, it exploded into a gorgeous firework in the night sky. 1, 2, the fireworks bloomed one after another, lighting up the quiet winter night sky in the mountains. I didn't know when he secretly brought back those big and heavy barrels of fireworks in the playground. Felix stood downstairs, looking up at me, who was standing dumbly upstairs. His face was even more breathtakingly handsome in the flickering light of the fireworks. Teacher Sherry, can this be regarded as the tuition fee for my first lesson? At that moment, I thought of what Walter said to Kitty in The Painted Veil. I know you're silly, flighty, and empty-headed, yet I love you. I know your aims and ideals, your snobbishness and vulgarity, yet I love you. I know you're second-rate, yet I love you. He wasn't attentive enough. He was frivolous and casual. He might not have good intentions and was just playing around, but he was so beautiful, and perhaps there was also a bit of sincerity in his occasional lazy eyes. And I was young, and I was in the prime of my youth. I was plain-looking, and I had neither wealth nor beauty to deceive others. Why should I be so cautious and afraid of falling in love? Felix came back from the city this Monday, bringing back a lot of good things again. The car raised dust on the dilapidated mountain road, The trunk was like a treasure chest that the children were eagerly looking forward to this time. There were string-less guitars that could be used by charging and were easy for children to get started with, a set of small drums, several bundles of picture albums, and new thermos cups for the teachers. Felix looked at the happy adults and children, and a look similar to compassion appeared on his face every time this happened. I always suspected that he was pitying us. It was as if he was standing at a very high place, looking down on us all, who were struggling in the mud, with a detached attitude. As soon as he saw me at the back of the crowd, his eyes lit up. He took a few steps and came to my side, smiling. "This is for Sherry." It was a small white box, seemingly a new style Bluetooth headset. I looked up at him, but was stabbed in the eye by a bright lipstick mark on the edge of his white collar. The long, buried inferiority complex in my bones was ignited by this trigger. My blood rushed to my head, and I waved my hand, unceremoniously knocking the small box out of his hand. "Keep it for yourself. My old headset is fine." Then I turned around and left. He was confused. I thought that I was just like a wild delicacy that Felix had in the countryside, and he probably had countless proper meals in the big city. However, this fit of pique didn't last long, because that night, Felix ran upstairs for the first time and knocked on my door, holding the shirt with the lipstick mark in his hand. His hair seemed to have just been washed and wasn't completely dry yet. The tips of his hair were wet, but not as wet and soft as his eyes. There was also a hint of undisguised excitement in his eyes. "Did you get angry with me during the day, just because of this?" I wanted to refute that it wasn't, but his eyes were too intense, and I couldn't open my mouth. After stuttering for a long time, I just said angrily, "I'll forget what you said about liking me last time." "No, Sherry, this was probably accidentally, when I was squeezing onto the subway on the way back." "Why is it always you who's so careless?" I interrupted him loudly, then realized that being so excited made me look very suspicious. So I suddenly fell silent. If I understand correctly, Felix, who was a bit anxious at first, calmed down at this moment and stated the fact. "You're jealous." In Felix's charming eyes was a flustered me. He seemed to have completely seen through my embarrassment and annoyance, but deliberately pointed it out. "I'm so happy, Sherry, you're jealous because of me." A few chuckles escaped from his rolling Adam's apple. His scorching breath seemed to spray beside my ear, and my earlobe uncontrollably became hot. "You're talking nonsense." I just wanted to feebly argue a few more words, but the moment I turned my face, he suddenly lowered his head and kissed me. His hot lips and tongue, as if waiting for a long time, tightly entangled mine. Felix held me tightly in his arms, passionately kissing me while mumbling, "I'm so happy and I like you so much." The cold of the winter night could no longer invade because his embrace was a small, blazing world. He was such a good kisser. Listening to the thumping heartbeat in his chest, my legs gradually went weak, and I could no longer resist. I could only sink deeper and deeper with the invasion of his lips and tongue. I would go home twice a week. This weekend, I said to my grandma, "Grandma, I have a boyfriend. He's the music teacher at school." Even though it was only temporary, the old lady was naturally very happy. As she threw firewood into the earthen stove, she said with relief, "Dear, you've finally come around. When are you going to bring him back for me to see? I've always said you're still young. Don't let your parents' matter affect you and make you." Grandma, she knew I didn't like her bringing up my parents, so she stopped talking. Instead, she just smiled, looking very happy. Her mottled wrinkles formed even deeper circles, like the rings of a tree. "Grandma was the biggest reason I stayed here. My parents divorced when I was young. I grew up with my grandma. My mother had already remarried and moved to another place. I could barely remember what she looked like. My father had been working away from home all year round and didn't even come back during the spring festival since he didn't do well outside. He simply stopped coming back completely. This was an unspoken rule in this remote town. Grandma was old. As people get old, they become more attached to their hometown and reluctant to leave. She didn't want to leave this rural town, but she always hoped that I could have my own life. She wanted me to be like those young and beautiful girls on TV, to fall in love, and to find my own free and open life. She didn't want me to be trapped in the mountains anymore. But I couldn't just leave my loved one behind. My life might not be worth much, but choosing to depend on each other with Grandma was my own decision, and I didn't consider it a sacrifice. Moreover, those children in the primary school were so much like me when I was a child. If there wasn't even one young person who could stay for a long time, how could the school keep going? I didn't plan to leave, and I didn't care when Felix would leave. Even if one day Grandma left, I would probably still stay in the small building at home and grow old alone. But in this predictable life, I wanted to be willful just once. Even if Felix was like a butterfly that would fly away in spring, I still wanted to hold on to him briefly once the flower of first love blooms. It exudes an incredibly charming fragrance. Felix was extremely clingy when in love. Those initial haughty looks and unruly demeanor had completely disappeared. He would listen intently to every word I said, and even remember the details I had forgotten. He said I seemed small and docile on the surface, but actually had my own ideas and temper, which made me even more attractive. He wrote beautiful love songs for me, accompanied me to watch the stars on snowy nights, secretly held my hand from behind in the crowd, and carried me across the muddy mountain road. Coincidentally, because Felix wanted to spend more time with me, the mountain road was blocked by heavy snow. He couldn't go back to the city on the weekend, and I couldn't go back to Grandma's house either. We walked hand in hand on the quiet and snow-covered campus. This scene was like love letter that belonged to me. I joked that Grandma also wanted to meet him, and he immediately agreed happily. Then the next day, the snow that blocked the mountain road was cleared, and I could take him home. Felix put his long arm around me and said, "Look, this is fate." Yes, it was just that coincidental. It seemed that even the heavens were helping us. The day Felix and I went home together, Grandma looked both happy and worried. On one hand, Felix was very polite. He somehow produced a bunch of tonics as gifts. On the other hand, he was very well behaved and diligent, helping to carry firewood, boil water, and cook. He had a sweet tongue and didn't have any trouble chatting with the elderly, since it was difficult to control the heat of the earthen stove. He kept asking Grandma for advice. After that, he praised Grandma for being skillful and having rich life experience. During the meal, he didn't keep complimenting the food. He just ate 2 big bowls of rice and finished all the dishes Grandma had prepared, looking as if he still wanted more. With these smooth moves, he made Grandma beam with joy. After the meal, Felix took a shovel and started shoveling snow in the yard. Very energetically. Grandma looked at the young man in the yard, but she was a bit worried. This kid looks like he comes from a wealthy family. He does these jobs like carrying firewood and cooking as if he's just trying something new. He's also very good looking. How could the mountains keep him? I didn't say anything. Suddenly, she slapped her head and smiled. "Oh, look at how slow-witted I am. If he can't stay, you can go with him, dear. Don't worry about me. I'm still in good health." "Grandma, it's still too early to talk about that." I knew that Felix would finish his teaching in the mountains life and go back in a few months. He and I were not from the same world, but at least I was happy at that moment. But what about after those illusory sweet moments? It was like the temporary amnesia caused by post-traumatic stress disorder. For a while, I almost forgot the unbearable memories that came after. It was not until the show called Love Portrait they mentioned started broadcasting that I woke up. Maybe it was also because of the overwhelming negative comments and the endless analysis videos of my various behaviors, which could remind me over and over again of what had happened after that. Felix and I had a sweet relationship for a while. During this period, Felix took care of me in every possible way, pampered me, and gave his all to treat me wholeheartedly. When I was chatting with Grandma in private, I even sighed and said, "Let's just date like this for now. Who can guarantee the future?" When Felix saw this video during the post-interview, his face darkened. He forced a smile and said to the camera, "It seems I haven't worked hard enough." The bullet comments were full of things like, "This woman is really good at fishing, one face to the front and another behind, playing hard to get well. Isn't this just arousing Felix's competitive spirit?" Felix evoking the bright moon of the day, shining on my heart full of ice and snow, with the mighty rivers flowing in my ridiculous and absurd love. The male lead's name was even fake. At that time I wasn't deeply in love enough to change my life choices for Felix, so he, together with the so-called program team, planned another event that was earth-shattering in my impoverished life. Felix rushed back to school in the middle of the night to celebrate my birthday. The car hit the rock wall at the bend of the mountain road. The violent impact sent Felix and the car flying out. He almost fell off the cliff and was smashed to pieces. Fortunately, someone else discovered him lying in the snow soon after and rescued him and sent him to the hospital. When I rushed to the hospital and saw him with bandages all over his body and casts on his legs and hands, my heart almost broke. Seeing the look of distress on my face, Felix comforted me instead. "Sherry, I'm not dead, am I? Smile. People might think you're a widow." When he said this word, he seemed to realize that it was inappropriate. He paused for a moment, and then his eyes became even more gentle. "You know, Sherry, when I was almost dying in the snow, the last thing I thought was, it's a pity that I haven't been able to love you for a long time, and that I haven't reached the day when I can promise you to spend the rest of my life with you." The words "spend the rest of my life" were brought up by him after experiencing life and death It only made me feel ashamed. I had always thought that one day he would return to his original world, and then I would let go gracefully, thinking that it would be good to have loved once. I thought this was the most rational expectation for the future, but he was so sincere, always putting me first. He almost lost his life for my birthday, wanted to love me forever, and even thought about a lifetime. People always said he was a proud person, and I had once thought he didn't give his whole heart, but until now, I realized that it was all my own malicious speculation. I was timid and narrow-minded, not daring to give myself completely. Guilt and bitterness filled my chest, and I hugged him tightly. Our two hearts had never been so close. So, after a while, when he finally recovered and was discharged from the hospital, and he knelt down on one knee in the fragrant and chirping mountain forest in spring, my heart, as if having expected it, softened involuntarily. Felix took a deep breath, and there was obvious nervousness on his face. He said, "Sherry, you might think it's too soon, but I'm really afraid that something unexpected will happen again someday. On the verge of death, my mind was full of you. I'm absolutely sure that you're the one I want to spend my life with." He also said, "I know your concerns, your persistence, you've changed me a lot and made me realize that I can also achieve my value here. I want to accompany Grandma to grow old with you, watch these children grow up and become successful. When one day you want to live in a different place, I will respect you and go with you." Finally, he kissed the back of my hand solemnly and devoutly, and put the ring he had prepared on my ring finger. Like casting a spell. "Promise me, Sherry." The slightly warm mountain breeze blew, and everything seemed full of hope. "Okay," I heard myself say. There was a comment under this episode of the show, "Such a cliché trick, how could anyone fall for this? It must be acting." In my ordinary and unchanging life, this was by no means a cheesy plot. Life and death, love and promises were like earth-shattering huge waves crashing on me, but in the eyes of the viewers, it was just a cliched handful of sand. The only thing that gave them a sense of freshness was my reaction. "She was so arrogant a few months ago, but now she can't keep up the act. She agreed so quickly. She must have been waiting for this day impatiently." TSK, Felix's acting skills are really amazing. I wonder if after acting for several months, he himself will get a bit too involved. No, after I said that okay, he lowered his head and was silent for a few seconds, but soon, he stood up leisurely, even patted the dust off his knees. When he looked up again, his expression was completely unfamiliar. The affection just now had disappeared completely. He hooked the corner of his mouth towards a certain corner. Mission accomplished. Suddenly, several groups of cameras emerged from those hidden corners. I was stunned. Felix showed that long, lost look similar to pity again. He patted my shoulder, as if he wanted to say something, but seeing that I was completely stunned, he finally only said 3 words. "Thanks for your hard work." His voice was as light as a feather. Then a tall and thin young man came over to put a coat on him. Felix didn't look at me again and turned to leave. That was the last time I saw him. The cameras rushed up like wolves and tigers to shoot my micro expressions up close. "Sherry, what are your experiences in the relationship with Mr. Felix in the past few months?" These people seemed familiar to me. They had often appeared in the town these days, saying that they were shooting a rural documentary. They had also been to the school to collect folk customs and to my home, saying they wanted to interview Grandma. Grandma was very happy and took out the candied fruits she made and the pear paste she brewed to entertain them. Later, she even said to me, "Maybe one day you'll see your grandma on TV." As slow-witted as I was, I now realized that they were not shooting any rural cultural documentary at all. The school, and even my home, were probably already filled with cameras everywhere. At the peak of the happiest moment in my life, my world was completely turned upside down. I couldn't say a word. After being silent for a long time, I actually laughed. The scene was really absurd. Felix completely left this small town, as if he had never appeared here from the beginning to the end. Due to confidentiality considerations, the show started broadcasting from the beginning a month after Felix left. That was a month when I was muddled and like a walking corpse, and an even bigger storm was yet to come. Once Love Portrait was broadcast, it caused a huge public outcry. At first, many people condemned this kind of subject matter, questioning whether it was inhumane for the program team to hide the truth and deceive the feelings of ordinary people. Then immediately, some people defended it, saying just watch it for fun. All shows these days have scripts, and everyone is an actor. Don't take it seriously. There was also a large number of people, mainly Felix's fans, who didn't think the whole show was fabricated. They just thought I was acting. They just couldn't believe that in Felix's popularity, I didn't have a part in it. It's okay to say you don't know other stars, but not know Felix. Act better, please. Whether it was acting or not, the show became a huge hit anyway. Felix's fans watched it while stubbornly arguing and pretending to be fainting. I also watched it from beginning to end. What could I say? The program team was really professional. Felix's character was set from the start. In the early stage, he was supposed to be a bit like a young master who wasn't used to the mountain village life. After falling in love with me at first sight, he was supposed to gradually change, learn to love, and become a qualified teacher, showing his charm and gradually attracting me. The key plots and events were also the work of the screenwriters. The quarrel not long after he arrived at school, the precarious simple chicken coop set up in advance, the lipstick mark on the collar, and the snow-blocked mountain that prevented him from going home. The true love I thought I had was like the world of Truman. The waves in my life were stirred by the big hand called entertainment to death, and the most wonderful highlight plots, the car accident and the proposal, were personally planned by Felix. Before the plan was implemented, he said nervously to the camera, "I don't feel very confident, I don't know if she'll fall for it." Although he said he wasn't confident, the smile on his lips clearly showed he was sure of success. My character design in the show, however, didn't seem to be that meticulously crafted. It wasn't malicious editing, but they were really good at seizing details. From the initial aloofness when Principal Zach asked me to show him around, my rather manic performance during the quarrel, and then comparing it with the gentle words I used to talk to Felix later, my previous cold attitude towards him seemed particularly ridiculous. When the emotions of an ordinary person are magnified by the camera without any disguise, they seem inappropriate or even ugly because of their excessive authenticity. Netizens are really good at analyzing micro-expressions. I never thought I rolled my eyes or pursed my lips in disdain at him, but as soon as there was the slightest change in my expression, the bullet comments would start counting my eye rolls and disdainful expressions. Here is Sherry's eye roll, 2/38, Sherry's disdain, 10/45. Felix seemed to be trying his best to pursue me, yet I had a bad temper with him for so long. Netizens analyzed that it was because Felix always brought good things to the school, whether for students or teachers, all of which were high-end items. I gradually saw through Felix's financial resources, so I changed so quickly. What the world calls admiring the strong means being infinitely tolerant of noble male stars and interpreting everything about a town girl as hypocritical and artificial. After analyzing this, netizens derived a new aspect to scold. That was about the shameless teachers and the principal in the school. It was okay for the innocent children to accept gifts and books, but why were these adults so at ease taking Felix's expensive things again and again? The poorer people are, the greedier they are. What the program team didn't include in the edit was that after everyone received the things, they would also bring delicious homemade food, like cured sausages and self-dried tea leaves, to share with him every week. We thought this was mutual care, friendliness, and concern. We also had no idea that the thermos cup he gave was a foreign luxury brand, and that soft, textured scarf was actually worth several thousand yuan. The living expenses of a mountain child in a year weren't that much. Obviously, we were all innocent people, but because of this show, we suffered a lot of criticism for no reason. At first, the negative influence didn't reach the town, because in this place, very few people would watch this kind of online variety show. Only the teachers in the school knew about it and shook their heads, saying how the world had changed. Principal Zach felt even more self-reproachful because he was deceived by the so-called volunteer project fabricated by the program team and accepted Felix, a stranger, to be a music teacher in the school. However, the town wasn't a place isolated from the world, as the show's ratings soared and even broke records, topping the hot search every day. Soon, various media, online celebrities, and bloggers flocked here. The town had never been this lively. There were people doing live broadcasts at the school gate, excitedly shouting to the camera, "Guys, this is the school where Felix stayed for a few months." There were people squatting outside my grandma's house, and there were those who somehow got my contact information. There were 8 so-called interviews a day, and they almost stuffed the microphone into my mouth, worried that if I didn't accept the interviews, they would keep squatting at the school or my doorstep. I accepted all of them. As a result, I was scolded even more severely online. They said that with such a high exposure, I just wanted to be famous. I didn't look like a victim at all in those interviews. I didn't cry or make a scene. I calmly answered their questions. They asked if I still had contact with Felix after the show ended. I lowered my eyes and shook my head. This action was later separately captured by marketing accounts and made into countless short videos that were spread all over the internet. The central idea was that I was deeply in love, couldn't get over it, and was still sad and couldn't move on after the show ended. They also asked if there would be more explosive plots later in the show. I was silent for a moment and said, there probably will be. At this time, the proposal plot hadn't been broadcast yet. And the show was just showing that I had just started dating Felix, but after this interview was posted online, rumors spread that Felix was going to propose to me. The program team was furious. This was a big highlight of the later show and shouldn't have been leaked at this time, so they contacted me again after a long time, and their tone wasn't very polite. "Miss Sherry, I don't really want to remind you, but after shooting the last scene, you signed a confidentiality agreement with us." Yes, after the show ended, I signed 2 agreements. One was a confidentiality agreement about the show's content, and the other was an exemption agreement. In the agreement, I had to state that the show didn't violate my human rights and privacy. After the event, I had reached a consensus with the program team, agreed to the show's broadcast, and wouldn't hold them accountable for anything as long as I signed. I would get a large sum of money, the assistant director said to me with a smile at that time. Of course, Sherry can also choose not to accept our conditions and safeguard your rights, but for things like rights protection, whether it's through lawsuits or other means, it will cost a lot of time, money, and energy, and public opinion may not be on your side. I understood what he meant. The show was filmed by them, and they could edit it however they wanted. I didn't hesitate for too long and signed those 2 agreements. Tina heard about this. As a woman in her 30s, she was so angry that she shed tears. She held my hand and couldn't say anything for a long time. I thought of the hot tears that Tina shed onto my hand at that time and coldly replied to the person on the phone, "I've never said a single word about the proposal in the interviews. You can check if you want." Although the people from the program team were very angry about the leakage of the show's highlight, they didn't have any evidence in the end, so they let it go. At the height of the popularity, I chose to start a live broadcast during my off-work hours facing the camera, I said in an extremely tired tone. Recently, some words in the media interviews, after being polished, deviated far from my original meaning, so, in the future, I will communicate with you here to avoid deeper misunderstandings from netizens. On the first day of the live broadcast, the popularity in the live room was extremely high. Most of the people in the live room were scolding me, saying that I finally showed my true colors and was going to make money. I really was a scheming woman who had known Felix's identity long ago and had been acting for several months. I ignored those who were scolding me and only answered the questions from those who asked. I kept a calm expression. However, I didn't have much free time. I still had to prepare lessons at night. I could only live broadcast for at most an hour a day. I could talk a bit about Felix, but not too much. I could answer some questions, but not for long. So, those who wanted to ask questions, those who wanted to scold, and those who wanted to watch the excitement were not satisfied, so they could only come back the next day to watch me. Although I was the one who was scolded the most across the internet for this show, the person who was probably the most annoyed across the internet now was Felix, because the night before, someone asked in the live room, "Was there really no script for the whole show between you and Felix?" I answered, "At least I didn't have one. My feelings were all real." The next day, a reporter blocked Felix at the company gate and asked, "Miss Sherry talked about her sincere and pure feelings for you in her first talk across the internet. What do you think, Mr. Felix?" The night before, in the live room, I shared the trivial matter that when Felix first came, he shivered from the cold because there was no air conditioner, and I gave him the quilt my grandma made. He still didn't know it was my quilt until now. The next day, a media person joked with him during an interview backstage at the evening party, "Do you know that you once shared the same quilt with Miss Sherry?" The night before, I casually brushed my hair during the live broadcast. The next day, someone showed him a picture on their phone and said, "Could the ring Miss Sherry was wearing last night be the legendary proposal?" Before the word ring was out, Henry had a dark face and stopped that person, saying, "Dear reporters, please try to ask questions related to our TV drama at the new drama press conference." The man beside Henry, whose features were more delicate than before, just lowered his eyes and seemed to be thinking, not saying a word. Besides the large number of people scolding me, there were originally only a few CP fans. Since I started sharing some behind-the-scenes stories in the live broadcast every day, the number of CP fans actually increased a bit, but it was still far less than the number of black fans. Now the live room is extremely lively every day because I'm emotionally stable, showing no signs of resentment, grievance, or anger. I just answer everyone's questions in a calm tone. Even some people who just want to have fun come to ask me all kinds of things, such as questions related to Chinese teaching, or the recipe for my grandma's homemade candied fruits. I even write calligraphy during the live broadcast. I've been practicing the thin, gold-style calligraphy since I was a child, and it has quite a charm. Some viewers ask me to write blessings. And I cooperate with a good temper anyway. I can talk about anything, of course, just because I don't make a scene, don't defend myself, and don't get angry. Some people even launched the absurd challenge of who can anger Sherry, so there have never been any shortages of veiled insults in the live room after a long time. Those people didn't wait for me to turn on the gift, giving and reward functions, and the product showcase was always empty, not looking like I was going to do live commerce, so they changed their tune again. You're not making money today. Not making money tomorrow, but one day you will. I'll keep an eye on you, bitch, keep an eye on me, scold me well. I'm not afraid of their scolding, I'm only afraid that they won't scold. Things had reached this point. One night, after I finished another live broadcast outside the room where Felix used to live, Tina, who had been watching me with a coat on outside the camera for a long time, finally couldn't help but ask, carefully choosing her words, Sherry, actually you've been doing this on purpose, right? I smiled at her. Yes, I've always been doing this on purpose. When my parents divorced when I was a child and they left without looking back, one losing contact and the other never coming back, I didn't cry because I thought I still had grandma. We depended on each other, and life would go on. Later, when Felix had the car accident and lay on the hospital bed as if he was about to die, at that time, I was still sincere to him, and my heart almost broke, but I didn't cry either. Because I thought he was still breathing, he would surely get better, there was hope in life, and I would accompany him. So, this time, after being deceived so terribly, being regarded as a clown by the world, and being completely toyed with by the person I liked, after living in a daze for a while, I still wouldn't cry. Crying and resentment aren't in Sherry's character. No matter how much I hate, it can't change the current situation. There was a bullet comment during the live broadcast before saying, Sherry's character, in terms of MBTI, is the so-called T-type, being straightforward and dealing with things directly. I don't understand what MBTI is, but I do solve problems when there are any. I will do everything I can, at all costs, get even. So, of course I was doing it on purpose, always. On the first night when this damned show was broadcast, before the public opinion swept across the whole internet, I did 3 things. First, I contacted a well-known media company in advance using the chip of revealing the content trend of the show between me and Felix in advance and giving their company priority in interviews. I exchanged for a large amount of full network promotion. The influence of the show alone wasn't enough. I wanted my interviews, the town's features, and local customs to be all over the internet. I wanted to be truly popular and drive the popularity of the town. They had the first-hand information of the popular show, and I had huge traffic. After skillfully signing a confidentiality agreement, everything was tacitly understood. Second, I registered accounts on the 2 largest social platforms and ambiguously posted the same dynamic. The content was the same sentence. I'm Sherry. I hope that after watching the show, everyone can see my sincerity. At first, no one noticed or paid attention to my social platforms, but as the show was broadcast, the longer the time passed, the more people would follow the clues to pay attention to me and scold me while digging into the details. After accumulating a certain number of fans, I chose the platform that offered a higher price and promised more traffic to start the live broadcast, and deleted the same dynamic on the other platform. Of course, I didn't need to do live commerce or accept gifts. The platform had already offered an astronomical price. Of course, this time, I didn't forget to ask for a confidentiality agreement. As long as anyone revealed my signing relationship with the platform, there would be a large sum of compensation coming in. The methods taught by the program team were really useful. I used them again and again. Third, that night, after drinking to boost my courage, I used a shard of the wine bottle to scratch my calf. There was a very faint small scar in that position. It was when Felix had the car accident and I was rushing to the hospital in a hurry. I accidentally fell and got scratched. In fact, it wasn't serious. I just wrapped it with a gauze casually because of the urgency of the situation. Seeing the gauze exposed from my scratched pants, Felix on the hospital bed had also shown a look of distress and self-reproach. That injury wasn't really serious, but now, it needed to be made serious. I scratched my leg until it was bleeding profusely. After live broadcasting for a while, I then seemingly accidentally revealed the leg with more than 10 stitches. The scar was winding and looked rather hideous, affecting the appearance. Even the viewers in the live room could tell at a glance that this was the injury I got for Felix, not to mention him himself. So, some voices began to sigh that I was really pitiful. I hadn't mentioned this matter for so long, and they didn't know if Felix knew about it. In this era of entertainment to death, if such absurd shows can exist blatantly, then there must be countless nosy reporters. Of course, Felix would know. After that, I seemingly reluctantly accepted various interviews, started live streaming as a matter of course, and vigorously hyped up the popularity. They were right in scolding. I did these things on purpose, but if I didn't do this, would people think I wasn't doing it on purpose? I'm not stupid enough to defend my purity and kindness by rejecting popularity and fame. No one would believe me, and I would end up with nothing. I can't change public opinion, so I might as well go with the flow. Although I was briefly worried that the excessive hype of popularity would bring trouble to the townspeople, but in fact, due to the influx of various online celebrities, media, fans, and busybodies, the consumption in the town was greatly promoted. The shabby small restaurant where Felix and I often ate was booming. There weren't enough hotel rooms, so many enthusiastic local residents cleaned up the empty rooms in their homes and rented them out as homestays. Even some of the parents of the children who went out to work came back to help. As for the school, there were always some kind-hearted people who noticed that the innocent children were still using old desks and chairs, so new desks and chairs were donated. The old library was renovated, and various supplies were provided. Even air conditioners were installed in the classrooms. I was very cooperative. At night, I took the donation list and thanked one by one in the live room where the popularity remained high. However, just with my interaction in the live room, there was no response from the other side. The show was about to end, and the popularity couldn't be maintained for long, so this time I deliberately bought a green train ticket for more than 200 yuan, endured the hardship of sitting for more than 30 hours, and went alone to City A to stage a show of chasing my man across thousands of miles. Whether I could see Felix or not didn't matter, as long as I could be seen by fans and captured by the camera lenses. I said I liked him on purpose, suspecting that he might be just behind the door, and I wanted him to hear it, but I didn't expect that after coming back this time, I received a call from Stars Entertainment. A middle-aged female voice claimed to be Chen Ting, the vice president of Stars Entertainment. Her voice actually seemed to have a hint of appreciation for me. "You're very smart, Sherry," she said. "Every step you took was timed just right." I replied indifferently, "I don't understand what you're talking about." "Don't worry, I'm not like Felix, whose only hobby is acting, and sometimes he gets too deep into the role and can't tell the difference between the play and reality." She said something rather inexplicable, and I interrupted. "If you have something to say, please get to the point. I'm recording." "Go ahead and record." "The wind makes a sound, and geese leave a trace. Since I dare to call you, I'm not afraid of you keeping evidence." Chen Ting laughed and then continued, "I want to ask you if you want to cooperate with us. Of course, this is a decision at the company level without Felix's knowledge." She said that I had been playing the role of a lovelorn and suffering person for so long, with scars and being silently cyber-bullied, and even chasing him to the company so infatuatedly, while Felix, apart from donating the show's appearance fee, didn't take any other actions. Gradually, a voice emerged, saying that I was a poor infatuated person, and Felix seemed too cold-blooded and unfeeling. Although this voice was still relatively small, their public relations department had sensed the risk of the situation expanding. Apologizing was out of the question, as it would seem like admitting he had really done something wrong. Suddenly interacting with me would be too abrupt, and according to Chen Ting, every time a reporter asked a question related to me, Felix's emotions would fluctuate. I almost laughed out loud. Chen Ting said that next, they would have their staff pretend to be Felix's sub-account, to interact with me in the live room, say some ambiguous and vague words, satisfy the CP fans and stir up a wave of enthusiasm, and at the same time, stop the mouths of those who said he was cold-blooded. Anyway, the situation is already in chaos. Let's give our Felix a share of this overwhelming fortune. Aren't you afraid of angering the solo fans?" She laughed and said, "You said they're solo fans. They're so loyal, not to mention Felix having an affair with a woman. Even if he's secretly married and has a pair of children, there will still be countless people stubbornly saying that their brother is innocent and will definitely tell us if there's any news." I just thought this woman was rather scary for seeing things so clearly. The conditions she offered were naturally good. Besides the established conditions, I even managed to get dozens of new computers for the school so soon. A small account often entered my live room. At first, it didn't attract much attention, but after I read its comments several times, others sensed something was wrong. Comments like, "When I asked you later, why didn't you tell me you had so many stitches?" and "I hope there will be a chance to taste the cured pork ribs made by Grandma again." After I read them, I smiled and said, Grandma's cured pork ribs are really delicious. However, there was no scene in the show where we ate this together, you see, asking vague questions that only the parties involved would know. Who else could it be if not the real person, the curious? People went to check its clues and found that the profile picture indeed matched the kitten in Felix's home that he had shown before. And the nickname was another way of writing his English name. After this fact was discovered, my live room reached its peak popularity. Even the fans who hated me to the core had to come in and wait to see if that person was really their brother. I was happy and often teased that small account occasionally. I was as gentle as a considerate flower. I don't blame you. I'm just a bit regretful. There are still so many things I haven't had the chance to say. Occasionally, it seemed like I was reminiscing about the past with a touch of nostalgia. The peach tree we planted together has grown. I wonder where we'll be when it blossoms and bears fruit. But sometimes I seem to have a split personality. One day, I would read the messages of this account word by word, and another day, I would completely ignore it, not even answering a single word. Repeating this way, my attitude was unpredictable, leaving people confused. After I ignored this small account for several days, a strange number sent a text message to my phone. Sherry, there was no other content, just a name and an ellipsis, but I immediately knew who was on the other side. Who couldn't tell the tone of their ex-lover when sending a message? It was the same during the live broadcast, and it was the same with this text message now. I replied in a seemingly surprised way, Felix. I naturally replied with his real name, and the other side fell silent. After a long time, he sent another message. When did you know? That was me. From the first message, I don't know why, but I just recognized it. I replied instantly. Am I blocked by you? You haven't replied to that account for a long time. I laughed and then typed, no, I just didn't see it. Just like you didn't see me in City A. You still hate me, don't you? Goodness, can't I make a witty remark? Now, I was truly and happily in a good mood, and my tone was even brisk. When I was in love with Felix before, although I was happy, I was indifferent to life and the future. I believed that I would grow old plain and simple as an ordinary girl in an unknown mountain area. But now, there are so many opportunities for adventure, challenges, and fun in life. Sometimes I even suspect that I might be a born performing type personality. It's just that my previous life was too unchanging, and no one paid attention to me, so I didn't have a stage to show myself. Now it's a big stage across the whole network, taking turns. It's my turn to perform for the world. This is really the worst of times. Human nature can be used as an observation object, wantonly fooled for entertainment. This is also the best of times. Even I, a girl from the mountains, as long as I have a small mobile phone, I can start a live broadcast, contact big companies, and stir up a storm of my own. How can it not be interesting? The repressed and silent Sherry, by a stroke of luck, has become a more outgoing person. Indeed, setbacks make people grow, and pain makes people break out of their cocoons. Felix seemed to have noticed this too. After a long while, he replied, you've changed a lot. Seeing that I didn't respond, after a long time, he sent another message. Sometimes I can't tell if I'm in the play or in reality now. I still didn't reply. From then on, the top-tier popular superstar Felix started sending me messages every day, with a sense of stealth. Scenes from the filming set, the rarely blue city sky, the healthy meals he ate at noon. He didn't mention the past, nor did he apologize. It was a deliberate avoidance. He just carefully shared his life bit by bit and asked about my recent situation, as if this could bring us closer again. I still replied according to my mood. He didn't care and kept this habit. After this lukewarm state lasted for a long time, one day he suddenly said, actually, do you know, Sherry, I couldn't help but secretly go back to see you not long ago. You were wearing a white dress and standing at the school gate after school, waving goodbye to the children, just like before. At that moment, I wished so much that I was really the music teacher who came to teach in the mountains. Seeing this, without any hesitation, I blocked his number. Soon, I started sending blessings to the former acquaintance I had just blocked on the social platform. I wrote a long passage, starting from recalling the beautiful time spent with Felix, to thanking the show for bringing me such a different life experience, and thanking those who had criticized or accompanied me over such a long time. Then I said, I especially want to thank Mr. Felix. Although our time together wasn't long, he made me a better person. I also wish you a bright future and a prosperous career. Considering that the show ended a long time ago, please allow me to return to a peaceful life. From today on, I officially withdraw from all social platforms, stop all live broadcasts, and this account will be cancelled in 3 days. Wish us all well. At this time, the attention of the show and myself across the network had been almost consumed. The people who cyber-bullied me had already gone to target the next victim, and there was news that the program team was actively planning the second season of the show. So when the photo of my engagement invitation was suddenly spread on the internet after I released this statement, it didn't cause much of a stir. Some people just sighed. I knew it. Sherry didn't have much sincerity, or, as expected of a master at luring men, she found someone to take over so quickly. The stage had been set up, just waiting for the main characters to appear. I dressed up carefully and took the arm of the tall man beside me when the two of us raised our glasses to thank the guests at the engagement banquet. The person who should have been filming on a set thousands of miles away stumbled in. He looked tired and dusty. His eyes were red as if on the verge of crying, as if he couldn't believe that the news of my engagement was actually true. I looked at Felix quietly, without much reaction. His fingertips were even trembling, and he couldn't speak coherently. Sherry, you clearly promised me first. How could you promise my proposal and then get engaged to another man? How could you do this? Before I could speak, the man beside me had frowned, and there was a hidden anger in his deep voice. Sir, Miss Sherry is my future wife. I will be her only and legal husband. Please watch your words. Wife, husband. Felix seemed to be stung by these words. His red eyes were filled with visible heartbreak. I thought such a promise only happened once in a lifetime. I thought you were giving me a chance to change. Sherry, I'm not, I said calmly. I just don't hate you. Do you know what it means not to hate? It means I don't care at all. The gap between you and me in all aspects is like a natural chasm. This is an insurmountable fact. Let me go. Felix. When I said this, Felix stared fixedly into my eyes. When he saw the absolute indifference and determination in my eyes, all the luster finally disappeared from his overly good-looking face, showing a kind of at a loss, blank, and fragile expression. Please, Sherry, can we go back to the past? I was really wrong. I didn't recognize my own heart. I deserve to die. I thought I was acting. I deserve to die. I trampled on your sincerity. I deserve to die, he muttered to himself, looking haggard, saying I deserve to die countless times. My fiancé's face was getting worse and worse. He couldn't help but turn around and prepare to find the security guards to kick this presumptuous guy out. The darling of the entertainment industry, the top-tier male star adored by everyone, had now come to the point of being kicked out. However, just as the man beside me turned around to find the security guards, Felix rushed up directly and dragged my hand, trying to pull me out. Someone then shouted in a timely manner, "There's a wedding!" Crashing. Felix's hand tightly held my wrist, with astonishing strength. Sensing that I wanted to break free, he held it even tighter, for fear that I would run away. In the moment when I was being dragged by him and about to run out of the hall, I turned my head and looked at the live broadcast camera shining faintly in the dark, and smiled slightly. I still won the bet. To put it simply, of course I wanted fame and fortune, but my ultimate goal had always been Felix. Creating a high-profile presence across the whole network was just to make sure that even if Felix was thousands of miles away, he couldn't escape the shadow of me. During the day, reporters surrounded him to ask questions related to me. When he went home and opened his mobile phone, he would see the live broadcast clips of me on social platforms. The company also had to discuss with him all day long how to deal with me, this difficult character. It can be said that although I wasn't by Felix's side, I was more pervasive than when I was with him, as I revealed day after day the care I had secretly given him before, things he had never really known about, and even the ugly scars he had never seen. Regret and remorse were like a spark, starting to ignite a thin wisp of smoke. The public might think I was just putting on a show, but only Felix would know that what I said was true. He had truly felt my silent love and care. Even though it was all just a deception, I still said nonchalantly, "It doesn't matter. I don't hate him." He could no longer ignore it and was even more eager to know what other love and tenderness he had missed in me. At first, Felix thought it was entirely regret, the result of his conscience bothering him, until I traveled all the way to Shanghai and said firmly that I still wanted to see him and still liked him. Felix shamefully discovered that he was attracted, just like he always felt during their relationship before. I knew that by pressing him so closely and relentlessly, there were only two possible outcomes. One was that he would completely get tired of my existence, weary of all my information, and yet be forced to be tied to me in the cyber world due to my continuous actions, being disgusted for a long time. The other was that he would realize that he had actually gotten used to my presence, that he still cared about my news and was attracted to me even more so. Once I no longer invaded his life as crazily as before and was even about to give up all my love and transfer it to someone else, he would have a huge withdrawal reaction. Looking at him tightly holding my hand, I knew that it was probably the second outcome after his earth-shattering and tear-filled heartfelt confession. I reluctantly agreed to give Felix a chance under the live broadcast camera that had been prepared long ago. His actions were broadcasted completely as expected, causing an uproar across the whole network. He didn't care about those who turned against him and scolded him for being spineless on the internet, because I had experienced the same. He would never know that the entire engagement banquet was a scam aimed at him. The fiancé was played by teacher Tina's younger brother, who volunteered for this special performance. Present were my grandma, the teachers from the school, and my friends. We had all been deceived, and now we finally got our revenge. After that, in order to clear my name, Felix also reported a series of illegal operations of the Love Portrait program team, including forcing me to sign the agreement. He had those top-notch lawyer connections that I didn't have, and we successfully won the lawsuit as a matter of course. The program team was forced to apologize. This absurd show would never have a second season. On that night when Tina asked me if I was doing this on purpose, she also asked a question: "You're not doing all this because you still like him and want to win his heart back, are you?" I shook my head without any hesitation. During that month when I was hit hard and suffered great trauma, I had already thought it through. What I liked, from beginning to end, was an image jointly created by the screenwriter and him, that arrogant and unruly but gradually warm-hearted and kind young master music teacher, not the perfect actor Felix. I didn't even know what his true character was like, and I didn't want to know anymore. It didn't matter. None of these could stop the determination I had made. I went to great lengths to get him back for only one purpose: those who fool others. Sincere hearts should also be prepared to be fooled. When we were deeply in love in the past, I also had many moments of opening my heart to him. I told Felix that even though I had relatives and was in my hometown, I still felt like a rootless weed, lonely and swaying in the mountain wind. He tightened the blanket we were sharing and said brazenly, "Weeds are good, they have the most tenacious vitality, Sherry. From now on, I'll support you." I really was like a weed. After being burned by the wildfire, I would grow even more vigorously. He should have been prepared for this. I would become a daughter flower that absorbed his nutrients for a lifetime, become a leech that continuously sucked blood from his skin, become an evil spirit that was difficult to exorcise, parasitizing in his body. After agreeing to give him a chance, I would sometimes sigh with a sad look and say things like, "I kind of miss the way you were when you were still Felix," or "You clearly wouldn't do XXX before." Every time this happened, a look similar to panic would appear on Felix's face, and then he would quickly correct himself. I would act on a whim and occasionally play the role of the former Sherry, clear-eyed and indifferent, innocent and shy, looking at him with the clean eyes he had kissed me with for the first time, eyes wet. I would come up with sudden ideas, sometimes being cautious, showing discomfort and unease towards his status as a big star, and he would unconsciously hide that arrogance of a male star. As time passed, year after year, maybe he would be tamed, or maybe he would be driven crazy, or maybe he would realize that his act of crashing the wedding was impulsive, that he hadn't gotten out of the role, and that he didn't actually love me as much as he thought. But even if that happened, I would find a way to overcome any difficulties. Once entangled by a weed like me, it would be for a lifetime. One day, after a long, long time, Henry asked me in shock, "He transferred all his personal property to your name, and you signed?" Without changing your expression or hesitation, I said, "Well, what else should I do?" The voluntary gift-giving commitment he wrote was quite sincere. "Felix," Henry had a complicated expression, "for so many years, he actually knew clearly that your feelings for him were no longer as sincere as before, but he still made this decision. He really loves you." I smiled. It proved that the taming was relatively successful for the time being. "I wonder how much you really love him," Henry sighed, as if not wanting to hear my answer, and left straight away. My gaze and thoughts drifted into the distance. If he could obediently lose himself and act as Felix for a lifetime, I would love him for a lifetime. This was the supreme mercy that I should have. The end.